Alrighty, hi there, ladies and gentlemen. It is a beautiful May 5th afternoon. Sorry for coming at you a little bit later than usual, but I gotta be honest with you, I'm a little bit nervous because we are finally getting into it today. I talked about it a little bit on stream yesterday about how I figured out how I want to start engaging with politics online, and I finally come up with it. Um, I got into, what would I say, leftist streaming, I don't know, 6 months ago, it feels like maybe. And now I have observed the entire trinity of online leftist streaming, Hassan Piker, Vaush, and Destiny, and I have some things to say about them. And, oh, I gotta turn my ringer off, sorry about that. It's a Twitch notification. I have some things to say about them. And I have some things to say about lots of other streamers and political content creators. And I noticed that there's really no one singular online source that lets you aggregate uh, the views of political commentators, and that kind of disappoints me as someone who is largely in favor of increasing the volume of political discourse and increasing the volume of accurate political discourse and interesting political discourse. It kind of surprises me that there's no centralized location that you can find on the internet to figure out the political positions of prospective commentators that you would be interested in viewing. And I decided to create such a centralized hub with this YouTube series that I'm starting on YouTube and Twitch called Streamer Lore, where we're going to be talking about streamers and other political creators later, but we're going to be starting with the Trinity. We are starting with the Trinity, with Vaush, because I started with Vaush. He's the first leftist streamer I found. And Vaush is definitely the most politically transparent of all three members. He also has the most accessible, I would say, most accessible streams of information for his positions. Like, we'll see. Let's see. We're not going to screw this up again. Bingo. So if you take a look here. Wait, are we not in the right window? Oh, I did it again. Okay, there you go. Sorry, folks. I'm still figuring this out. So if you look here, we're going to give Vaush about 3 hours here to introduce himself today. And then we're going to see how he goes against some other people. We're going to see how he goes against Tim Pool. I've never heard him on this podcast. We're going to get to know this guy. I watched this video. This is the video that made me want to make this series. We'll talk about it later. This is a very interesting critique of Vaush that I got 10 minutes into that I thought would be very good for this series. I also thought that because Vaush is such a popular debate streamer that we should feature some debate from him. I also looked on Reddit to figure out videos to start with for Vaush. By the way, one of the reasons I'm making this series is even on Reddit, people don't really know where to start with these political commentators, so we really need a place to start. This is really the only debate that I watched with Vaush, and I just watched it for a little bit. Oh, and the one with Yarn Brook. That might be better than this one. Although this is definitely a super interesting video to see Vaush debate with. And then I just saw this video in my recommended feed today, and it could be interesting to take a look at too. But that is, 3 hours, 5 hours and 20 minutes. We'll call that 6 hours, 7 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. So just 10 hours of Vaush content to start off episode 1 of Streamer Lore. But I think we're just going to be listening to Vaush talk about Politics 101, Politics 102, and maybe we'll start the Tim Pool podcast today. But I'm a little nervous doing this. This is my first time doing this, so please bear with me. We're going to figure this out together, and let's get to know this man a little bit better. Oh, yeah, no, I don't even really know what I'm doing here. I was going to describe a little bit more about the purpose of this series, but let's just get into it. I've also never seen this video. I've only seen, let's see. Yeah, I've only seen this one, the first 10 minutes of this one, maybe a little bit of this one, and yeah, I think that's it. So this is mostly be my first time watching most of this shit. All right, let's get into it. Thanks. Oh, captions on?
Hey there, my name is Vaush. I'm a political live streamer and YouTuber, and I am also a socialist. I mention that primarily because I believe that it's really important to understand any biases that go into the media that you consume. There's always a bias. There's always...
This is embarrassing. I can't believe I just started. I had to sneeze, but I only had to sneeze a little bit. It's already adding some political tension to this video.
An edge, you know? And I'm a socialist. That informs my politics and my perspectives. But I think that what I have to say is applicable and agreeable no matter what your political perspective is.
I will start with this, by the way. I kind of think that Vaush is left-wing Ben Shapiro. I've never heard anybody say this, but kind of seems like they have some strange relation to each other, and also they like the debate kings of their ideological positions or ideological wings.
I mean, even if you really, really disagree with me. So I get a lot of questions about what it is that I believe and broadly, like, how to engage with politics. I mean, politics is important. People care about it a lot. A lot of money and time goes into the study and
I have some delicious coffee here, by the way, and I hope you're having a great day. I forgot to mention that.
exercise of political power. And sometimes the questions that people ask me are so broad, so fundamental, that it's almost impossible for me to give a direct answer. I mean, sometimes people ask me stuff where I feel like sometimes I don't even know the answer directly. It's so simple that it's unintuitive. A while ago, like 2 years ago, I made a video called Politics 101 with Professor
Someone
Vaush.
just follow me?
It's a live.
Seriously? That had to be for Vaush, didn't it? That had to be. Oh no, thank you, Mirage Leonardo 84. Thank you, man. I don't know. I don't know what you see the video follow so far, but thanks for tuning in. Sorry, you startled me a little bit there, bro. How's your day going? I can't even see you in the chat.
Right there. I'm not actually a professor, but you know, it's an explanatory video.
Is that real?
It's 2.5 hours long. I look like crap. Old webcam. The site looks like crap. Old site. I mean, all of it's just
thank you,
a
man.
mess.
Fucking making my day out here.
But a lot of people like this video because I broke down my approach to politics, not just why I care about it, but you know, how I approach it. Why? Because people ask me, like, how do you get your political views? And man, that's a really complicated question, you know? I want to revise that video. That's what this is. Hopefully it'll be
Oh, thanks, man.
little more concise and a little bit more informative.
Well, I hope you stick around.
Let's get started. This video, like the last one, will be unscripted. I have a couple of bullet points next to me, but apart from that, this really is all off the cuff, so we'll see how comprehensive I can get. Now, the real heart of this question is, what are politics, and why are they important? I mean, really, like, what is politics? I mean, what
Oh, jeez. We're really getting into it here, aren't we?
even mean? Really, it's obviously important. People obviously care enough about it to kill or to be killed. It's the center point of like modern discourse, really. I mean, anybody who pays attention to modern media these days has to acknowledge the fact that political discourse is like central to many people's lives. But why? I mean, why do we participate in it all? I mean, I like politics and I participate in politics because I think a study of politics is essential to understanding the world and changing the world in some manner or another. I think that's critical. There are many parts of our world, elements of them, systemic or individual, that suck, you know?
We might need to skip ahead.
Like some things really suck. Whether these be individual problems like a person being abusive or like sexist in a relationship, or whether they be broad and systemic like, you know, poverty or hunger. There are reasons why these things happen. Nothing is natural, really. I mean, we built this world. We conquered this planet as much as any other entity ever has before, and we have control over a lot of these problems. So when I focus on politics, I mean, when I think what I want to do, I want to, more than anything else, increase the amount of good in the world. That's really vague, right? Increasing good in the world. I mean, it's almost insultingly arbitrary, you know? But actually, I think that if you ask most people, I mean, you know, whether they agree with me or not on the socialism thing, you'd find they also want to increase the good in the world. That also seems to be the thing they care about mostly. Like, that seems to be the thrust of the issue. But people disagree wildly on what is or isn't good, or how to do good, or what good should be done, or what good should be ignored and left for others to do. And it's actually really astonishing when you think about it, because we live in a world where almost everyone agrees that you should engage with politics to the end of making life better for people.
Yeah, that's not a really good resolution. So we definitely need some little boundaries on that political resolution if we're gonna start an entire political philosophy there.
And then we all end up arguing and disagreeing anyway. Why? Well, let me bust out the paint stream.
Okay, here we go.
To discuss something as fundamental as
the end of politics is to establish human good, and we're going to paint about it.
Why do people disagree Unfortunately, and I really do mean unfortunately, we have to talk just a little bit about philosophy. I mean, just a little bit, okay?
Not me, not me. Starting my entire political channel and YouTube channel, talking about political philosophy for hours, and then running a political platform about
Please
it.
keep in mind, I beg of you more than anything else, okay? If there's anything that you're to take from this, more so than anything I have to say directly, it's this, okay? Every subject that I touch on, every topic, every pointer, all of it, they are all being simplified for the sake of this video, this stream. There is absolutely no way to comprehensively cover everything that I am to discuss here. It is not possible. It cannot be done. So instead, I'm going to touch on these points, and I'm going to encourage you, if you find something interesting, to think about it a little bit more and maybe do some research into it. And I'll talk about that shortly as well. So in order for us to understand the very, very, very basics of
I didn't know this was going to be a paid stream.
philosophy, we need to understand the difference between two types of claims. They're called normative claims and descriptive claims.
Okay, here we go.
Now, a descriptive claim, which I'll represent with a large D. See, look, I've even bolded it there. See, it's like word art, like clip art, you know. A descriptive claim is a claim about the world which is empirical. It's measurable. It's substantive. I could say, for example, that upon this hand I have 5 fingers. Now, if you want to, you could be infinitely reductive here. What exactly is a finger? Is a thumb
Oh, hey,
finger?
thanks for tuning in,
Where
man.
does the finger begin or end? How do you determine what is or is not a hand? Etc., etc. But 5 fingers. I think we could agree on that for the most part, leaving aside the, the philosophical meanderings, okay? But then you have normative claims, okay? Normative claims are moral statements. They're statements about the world, but they're statements which infer or directly state some kind of moral belief. So I'm going to give you 2 claims that sound very, very similar, and I want you to distinguish between them, which one is normative and which one is moral, okay?
Say what you will about me. Say what you will about Vaush. It's actually really surprising that he's like, oh, we're going to talk about political philosophy now. And then he starts with the most basic levels of linguistic description.
Here's claim 1. Now, this isn't necessarily true, but for simplicity's sake. Most women are housekeepers. That's a claim that one could make. And then here's another claim. Women should be housekeepers. Do you see the difference between those 2 claims?
Okay.
One thing that people like...
Seems like we might need to get a half hour into this video before we really get into the political philosophy.
...to do. Whether
I don't know. I think I'm being a little bit too cynical here. Also, it's important to try and come into all these videos with an open mind, and I'm going to try and reintroduce myself here with an open mind, so sorry.
Mix up claims that are descriptive and claims that are normative. The first claim, which is descriptive, and let's assume that it's true. It might not be. That's not the point here. But if it were true, it's a descriptive claim. You can measure it. There's a yes or a no answer to that, whether or not most women are housekeepers. But the second claim, the normative claim, which I will not represent with a large N, the normative claim is about what the world ought be. The distinction essentially is ought. And this is a concern in the philosophical world and academia, and it has been for a very long time. It's called the is-ought gap. How do you arrive at what the world should be when all you know is what the world is? That's the is-ought gap right there. And it's basically been the center of philosophical discourse for as long as we've had philosophical discourse. Because all we know is what the world is, really. How do we arrive at what the world should be from that? Well, there are many ways to do that, actually. You see...
By the way, if you can't tell already, Vaush has a sociology degree, and I have to say, it is really interesting to hear how a sociologist is going to, well, a sociologist major is going, I don't even think he has a master's. I don't even have a bachelor's, just for the record. How he will arrive, it really does seem like he is taking his time here to try and establish a base for his political philosophy. I don't really want to get into it 8 minutes in, because if I start disputing these prescriptive, he's not even really making super disputable claims, but I feel I already know that some people watching would be annoyed at me that I know for not jumping in here already.
Axiom. Okay.
Let's maybe get to the Enlightenment before we really start disputing this guy.
Axiom,
we'll see what his
or
thought experiment is,
first
though.
principle or properly basic belief. There are a lot of terms that mean very similar things. It fundamentally refers to a core value that you hold. Okay? I'm going to draw a little axiom right here. And I mean, when I say core value, I mean the most. Oh, it looks kind of like a little anarchy symbol, doesn't it? Here, I don't want that necessarily. Here, I'll make it a little. See, there we go. Still cute. See, I like the anarchy too, but we'll try to keep our concepts distinct here. Make it a Dragon Ball. You know what? Yeah, let's do that. Here, hold on.
Okay.
Little mouse stars. Yeah. There, it's a Dragon Ball. There we go. Think of that as an axiom. See, there's
one good star on that Dragon Ball. No, there's not.
An axiom is a fundamental moral belief.
His voice sounds like liberalism. I look at politics the same way I look at Facebook. I feel like a vast majority of people, Vaush, Hall, etc., they get into these debates, but I feel like they don't do anything about how to actually make the world a better place. Not to mention the term morality has been thrown out the window when it comes to debates. His voice sounds like liberalism. Well, I hope we're not talking about my voice, although, if you watch some of my older videos, you'll see that I identify as a libertarian, but I got knocked into the liberalism political category by the 8 values test. I got to get my liberalism card back. Oh, thanks, man. Vaush is a socialist. He's not. I'm not sure if I'd classify him as a revolutionary socialist. He has very interesting positions on the necessariness. That's not a word of the revolution, and whether or not it's achievable in America. Because he tries to. Oh, I'm worse. He tries to be. Oh no, he's worse. He tries to be reasonable, with his estimation of, like, there's obviously not going to be a socialist revolution in America with the Second Amendment and the world's largest military, but he has largely revolutionary goals. He believes in what I would say is like revolutionary decommodification, which I'll let him talk about that. Hey, thanks for tuning in, man, by the way.
About the world.
And what should political creators do to try and make the world a better place? Actually, considering that he said it's the end of politics to try and make the world a better place, it's really interesting that he doesn't do as much, in your opinion. What can political creators do to make the world a better place? I don't know. It's really just advocate for their positions, isn't it? And Vaush does a lot of charity streams. You know what I mean? Lots of leftist creators do charity streams. I don't know. I'm running a political platform. Minoritarian thinking instead of majoritarian.
So I'll give you a really simple one. It's one that I believe in. And to describe it in its entirety would take a lot of qualifying and a lot of explaining. But simply, I believe that the well-being of living things should be maximized. That is to say, I think that if you're conscious, because I like animals too, you know, if you're conscious, if you can think, if you're engaging with the world, that life should be made good for you. We have finite lifespans. I personally prefer being happy to being unhappy. Just a personal opinion of mine. Seems other people feel the same way. Hell, even animals seem to feel the same way. We all seem to be pretty much united in our preference for happiness over unhappiness. So, since that seems nice, I have an axiom.
Here we go. We're moving from logical definitions into the state of nature, aren't we?
Preference for the well-being of living things. Now, how do I know that's worth pursuing? Well, this is where we get to moral
utilitarianism,
realism, and this gets more complicated than I can really.
Did we really want to be happy? Oh boy, man! You wanna start off a discussion on political philosophy, on how we can construct our states with, do we really want to be happy? Don't we just want to be interested and inspired? I said this at the very top, although you weren't here, that what did Vaush say? Establishing increased goodness, or it wasn't necessarily increasing happiness. He phrased it slightly differently at the beginning of the video, but yeah, his political philosophy is kind of based on one resolution so far, and yeah, it's insufficient.
Really delve into, but philosophers have differing ideas on the extent to which you can prove that an axiom is correct. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to go into that, and I don't want to dally too much in the philosophy stuff, because of all the subjects we're going to discuss, this is the one that I have the there's the greatest distance between how much respect I have for it and how much I know about it. A lot of respect, but it's very complicated. Maybe we can expand upon that in the future. So I think that axioms are more of a personal preference thing, but there's a lot of variance there. What matters most is that humans seem to basically have the same axioms, at least broadly. I mean, talk to people, What is it they value? For the most part, it's going to be well-being. Now, a lot of people don't really have a coherent or really rigorous understanding of their own philosophical thoughts, They don't really have a full understanding.
Oh, hey, thanks for tuning in, man. How's your day going?
Certain moral things over certain other moral things. But if you talk to most people, like, hey, why do you think child poverty is bad? Well, makes them unhappy. That's not fair, Well, why should it be fair? Why ought they be happy? Well, maybe because they, also value human happiness. The distinctions tend to come in when we argue over how to best maximize human happiness. And that's really the key point right there. If you talk with people with different political values, like...
the maximization of human happiness, like the literal utilitarian basic definition for the whole philosophy, it is insufficient to create a state around that basis. You're not going to be able to... We can't agree on establishing what universal goods are, so putting one person at the top and saying that they need to maximize everything, or, I don't know... Vaush probably believes in a decentralized definition of what the good is, but he wants probably an authoritarian method of enforcement, whatever that definition is. And once again, we're going to create some problems there. But let's let him talk about it before I pigeonhole his positions, eh?
And a Republican, you'll find that people, even if they believe human well-being should be maximized, have incredibly different beliefs about what it takes to make things or people happy. There are, even within the simplest possible constructs, it's think about it. Think about poverty, for example. Most people would agree that poverty makes people unhappy, and most people would agree that it should be minimized. But if you talk to a socialist or a social democrat, they'll describe poverty as a systemic issue, and you can fix it through systemic solutions. If you talk to most conservatives, they'll describe it as an individual issue that can be solved with individual solutions, usually hard work or a really strong work ethic. So even if you agree that there's a problem, how to solve that problem is still a matter of consequence. What you need to do is you need to find out how to draw the line from a thing that you support all the way back to the axiomatic belief that it connects to. So I'll give you an example of that really, really easily, okay? Let's talk about trans people, which we never do on this channel. A little bit of a departure from the norm, okay? Let's talk about...
I feel like that's a joke. I don't know.
Trans health.
I don't spend enough time on Vaush. Okay? Josh.
So here's a position that I have, okay? And I'm going to walk you through it step by step. I believe that...
This is interesting. I said in my... I really don't understand Marxist thinking and anything resembling it. The thinking is that the proletariat, which no longer exists thanks to capitalism, should no longer be deprived of their work, right? That is, by the way, simply possible with the capitalist system. You can choose to set up your own company or go through a self-employed person or a self-efficient. So yeah, Vaush is actually, this is what Vaush talks about when he says he's in favor of the decommodification of labor. So, like I just said, I don't want to pigeonhole this guy's positions, and I don't know them that well, but Vaush is part of the socialist wing that believes that it's primarily talks about establishing the socialist revolution through the democratization of the workplace. He's super into worker co-ops. That's kind of actually almost all he has when it comes to policy solutions, in my approximation so far, and that kind of fits into your system. That kind of agrees. That's kind of him and me agreeing with you a little bit that a worker co-op system, although Vaush wouldn't maybe agree with this statement, a worker co-op system can likely fit inside a capitalist system without any revolution being required whatsoever. Workers unite. He said that, not me, by the way. So, workers should unionize if they want to, and not if they don't.
Trans healthcare should be covered by Medicare and Medicaid. I think that it should be covered. It shouldn't be considered a cosmetic treatment, that it should be considered core medical care. That's a belief that I have. So I'll represent that belief with a little star right here.
Let's go back a second.
I believe that trans healthcare should be covered by Medicare and Medicaid. I think that it should be covered. It shouldn't be considered a cosmetic treatment, that it should be considered core medical care. That's a belief that I have. So I'll represent that belief with a little star right here. So somebody might ask me why. And then the answer that I would give to that why, is because the medical research seems to indicate that trans people's relationships to medicine pertaining to their transness.
Well, if you don't join, you go into the gulag. Well, no, dude, not necessarily. Under a worker cooperative system, if you don't join, you just get a job somewhere else. A worker cooperative is just I don't actually know a lot about it, but it's just a regular capitalist business, except it's owned by the workers. They, instead of going to a bank to gather the capital required to start their business, they pool it, or they wait to or they just wait to save their money together. And then they start a business with that. And instead of one person at the top, they just all vote on everything. And instead of organizing their profits by 1% at the top, they all organize the profits together, if they make any profits.
Is something severe. It's
also, I'm not a Marxist, dude.
Something that relates very, very directly to their well-being. It's not just cosmetic. It's not just to make them feel better. This is every bit as essential to them as...
Oh, you know what I should do?
Well, essential medical
care. I should move the chat to the bottom left.
Identity would be me. And then they could say, okay, fine, maybe. But why?
There you go.
And then I would say, because I believe that society giving special provisions to people who have necessary medical treatments benefits society. I think that we're better off, that society is better off when we're willing to give a little bit more leeway, whether that be financial support or whatever else, to people who need essential medical care. And then they would say, oh, well, why? And then I would say, because the access to essential medical care, when needed, is a core component in human happiness. And then they would say, okay, fine, sure, so why is that important? And then I would tie it back to the axiom.
This isn't that complex.
I think human well-being should be maximized. Does that make sense? I'm often frustrated when I talk to people who I disagree with, because it seems like there's a disconnect between the things that they claim they believe and the things that they actually advocate for. And this is the number one best way to make sure that the things you're advocating for directly lead from your beliefs, from your first principles. It's a way of making sure you're being consistent. And that consistency is really, really important. Because I feel like we could use this clip against Vaush later a bunch of times. Has a disconnect between what they support and what they claim to care about. It can be really difficult to get over to them. This is what I feel.
It's really difficult to argue all your political positions back to first principles. Like, it's a really difficult thing for anybody to do. Did he just claim that all of his are? I think he just said he tries to. I guess so do I.
Like I'm doing most often when I talk with more moderate conservatives. You know, a lot of moderate conservatives are totally cool with like a $15 an hour minimum wage or higher unionization. They care about these things. They care about poverty. They care about, decreasing austerity. There's like a lot to agree with them on. But then they vote Republican.
Marxists aren't lizards, man. You're just shitposting.
Well, why did you do that then? And usually if you talk with them for a bit, there's some...
You should follow me though, dude.
Wedge issue, some set of beliefs or often misconceptions that led them to do so. And when you talk with them, you realize
I gotcha.
This person isn't acting in their own self-interest. This is where the concept of class consciousness comes from. It's a Marxian concept. It's the idea that in a good society, a society which is just and fair and equitable, workers, the working class, so people who don't own businesses, essentially, most people, that the working class would have class consciousness, or they would be familiar with their class relationship to the world. That is to say,
we jumped from first principles to class consciousness very quickly.
They would learn to act and to think in their own self-interest. And that is
you're right, Chatter.
A lot of what I feel like I'm fighting for here. There are a lot of poor people in this country who fight against stuff that would take them out of poverty. There are a lot of people who suffer from discrimination who will fight against ideas designed to emancipate them.
Maybe we should have a political system that isn't entirely based on maximizing a singular definition of good then, Vaush.
Now, there's one other thing that I want to touch on here before I move on to a more specific political pointer, and that's consequentialism. So there are a lot of roads by which you can assess the morality of an action. The two most commonly invoked are deontology and consequentialism.
I do think Vaush actually. I agree that he's very monotone. Like I'm someone who can get very loud and get very quiet and go up here, go down here. Like I jump around all the time in terms of the way I talk, and I also like gesture quite frequently. I'm someone who should be in this fucking business. I think Vaush does kind of have a little bit of a monotone vibe.
A deontologist, and if you really want to read Kant,
oh, it helps him stay calm though. You know what I mean? Like when I get into debates and when I argue with people, like I raise my volume, I use my vocal range, and yeah, like when I debate against someone or argue with someone who comes across in a very calm manner, it's a very good way to seem intellectually superior.
You can't.
Although I try and have fun with it, which is why I do what I do.
But God, a deontology, and that's consequentialism. So there are a lot of roads by which you can assess the morality of an action. The two most commonly invoked are deontology and consequentialism. A deontologist, and if you really want to read Kant, you can, but God. A deontologist, put really simply, believes that the moral worth of an action is determined by the action in and of itself. That, for example, lying is wrong, or that, that stealing is wrong. Just like flat out, like bar none. Like that's done right there. And of course, it gets more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it. Whereas a consequentialist is of the opinion that it is only the consequences of an actions that are wrong. That is to say, stealing is often wrong because the consequences of stealing often lead to an immoral redistribution of resources. But if you're, I don't know, stealing guns from someone who you know is going to put out a hit on someone
hey man,
else,
how's it going?
something like that, then I don't know, maybe that would be a moral act of theft because you're depriving them of the resources that they would need to commit some other heinous moral crime. Or maybe lying can be justifiable sometimes if the lying has a good outcome. Now, most of the time, lying is probably not a great thing to do, not a good foundation of trust for your relationships, and I personally place a very high.
We're getting there, folks. We're getting there. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you don't pre-watch the content that you're gonna get into. Is we do spend a little bit too much time. We have spent a little bit too much time here talking about some pretty esoteric stuff and not really getting into political philosophy. Although I really do appreciate the attempt that I made or I'm currently making to establish a political base for your philosophy before you talk about your actual political positions. I don't think he sounds like a guy who sells Viagra on TV.
Honesty, but sometimes, the old example, and this is the example most often used, I think, in relation to this question is, what if you're a sympathetic German citizen during the Third Reich, and you have kept, Jewish neighbors in your house, and, the SS asks you, are you keeping anyone with you?
Excuse me.
Now, if you tell the truth and say yes, you will die, and then they will die. Your family will die. And maybe your neighbors will die too. Just the ones who weren't even involved. Who knows? They were pretty trigger happy back then. Whereas, of course, if you lie, then potentially all those lives could be saved. Now, again, I speak to my biases. I'm a consequentialist, and that informs my beliefs. I'm not a deontologist, so maybe I've made my position seem a little bit more sympathetic than the other. But, we all have our biases. You should look that stuff up. The Stanford Plato Dictionary is
definitely not familiar enough with consequentialism and deontology to weigh in on this part of his lecture.
For familiarizing yourself with philosophical subjects.
Took a bunch of philosophy courses in my first year and I hated them. Maybe my second year actually. I hated them though.
Very, very good to look into. And the more you think about your political positions, the more helpful it'll be to understand how to effectively and consistently apply them. The more and the better you can do that, the better off you're going to be. That's very, very, very important. So I can talk about the theoreticals here forever. I could ramble forever about this, but in reality,
yeah, let's go.
Eventually, you have to start talking about the real world, and I think it's time we finally moved on to that.
I agree.
Anyone here in chat I happen to know about a little thing called the Enlightenment. Are you familiar with this little this thing?
Here we go, baby. This is where Vaush is going to out himself as a Rousseauian, and then we can just stop here.
As it's known historically. I'm happy to hear that some people are
most socialists are Rousseauians.
Familiar with the meme known as the Enlightenment. So, for our purposes here, and I am being very, very reductive, human history, prior to a point I'm going to describe a couple hundred years ago, was a large miasma of societies, civilizations, heroes and villains, conquerors and democrats, leaders and followers, and their beliefs varied tremendously. There were periods of time, historical civilizations from this miasma, which had radically different views to others. I'm not to say that they're all exactly the same, only that for our purposes, I want to speak of a general trend that was present in the world during that time period. Okay? And again, we're being very reductive here. And that belief was one of hierarchy. See, no matter what part of the world you're in during that time period, the predominant understanding of the human condition...
Are we just going to get into the Marxist definition of feudalism right now, and that's the Enlightenment?
...was that some people are born or fit or ordained to lead, and most people aren't. Now, there were many theories justifying this. There were religious and caste systems which explained that humans, through birthright or through trial or through conquest, determined whether or not they were worthy to be part of a higher or lower political station. There were the divine right of kings was a really common idea. The idea that the monarchy, this wasn't just a royal family. God chose these people. Their blood was divine. And so their rule over the people, it wasn't just some political, convenience. It was a direct expression of the will of God. You also have that with theocracies, of course. And, we all know the Catholic Church and their, right to rule in Europe for the great many years. You had emperors and empresses, kings and queens. If you go back far enough, even back to pre-civilization times, you had tribal chieftains, and very often they had their own justifications for why some people were sicker and less cringe than other people. Usually the general attitude, and again, this is all very generalized, okay? There were some societies, even back a while ago, way before the Enlightenment, that were pseudo-democratic, and there were civilizations far, far kinder to their lower classes than others. But never really hit the mark, in my personal opinion.
Nasty, Buddhist, and short, as Hobbes would say.
Now, it wasn't just about the divinity or the supremacy of the people who ruled. There was also this attitude that the average person was just not really fit to have that much control over their own lives. Back in the days of the European feudal kingdoms, it wasn't just that the kings and queens were divinely chosen. It's that the peasantry were ignorant.
This is a weird historical analysis.
And stupid.
Also, we're halfway through his discussion of the Enlightenment, and we have not got there yet.
And degenerate, essentially, and small-minded. And that they weren't really capable of managing their own lives, They were essentially cattle to be moved around by the real players. It's funny, actually. Game of Thrones actually satirizes this exact idea, and this was a common idea back at the time. The Game of Thrones, especially back when it was good, before Season 5, a lot of it was kind of about how all of Westeros had maybe a couple dozen people moving the chess pieces, and everyone else was just sort of fodder to die in warfare or to be, to be used to raise weaponry or cattle or food. You know what I mean? But for the most part, the only people making real decisions, small, proportion, a very small number of, what would you call them, Westerosians? Of Westeros's people were actually making these decisions. And to an extent, that's kind of how it went down. Most people, most peasants, most serfs just were not given that much control over their lives. But But
Fridge.
then we had a little something called the Enlightenment.
Here we go.
Now, before the Enlightenment, the predominant...
By the way, that wasn't even a good Marxist analysis of feudalism. That just wasn't a good summation of feudalism, how it developed or how it ended. We're not going to get into it right now, but we could do better there.
Intellectual trend in the political...
Nothing to do with religion, by the way, there. All the development or the elimination of feudalism.
Sphere in
or economics.
Europe was
just divine right, and then it went away for no reason. And people were chattel the whole time.
That the peasantry needed to be...
And then the Enlightenment happened. Okay, I'm going to stop being an asshole.
...controlled by their superiors for their own sake.
I'm not going to stop being an asshole.
It was just a
necessity. I'll talk less, though.
Morality didn't even really play into it, frankly. It wasn't even about what was right or wrong. It's just the peasantry couldn't manage their own affairs. And to an extent, unfortunately, that's kind of true. They couldn't read or write.
Yes, I was going to say as well.
Unfortunately, being able to read or write is pretty essential to being able to meaningfully control your own life. Without being able to read or write, you can't really participate in long-distance communication without an interpreter or translator. You can't read the word of God, which precludes you from being a member of the
there we go
priest class. You can't really settle debts or manage ledgers that well, which makes it difficult for you to participate in, the...
Oh, hey, man, thanks for tuning in. How's your afternoon going?
It really kind of precluded you from any meaningful political engagement, which is unfortunate. I mean, you could be a soldier, there's that, and there were some illiterate soldiers who rose up and maintained some decent station.
Pretty sure lots of soldiers need to know how to read. At least you definitely need to know how to read if you want to be an officer.
But
I think you probably had to know how to read if you wanted to be a legionnaire.
That's really more of an exception.
I don't know, though.
Usually soldiers did not do much other than die for their kings and queens. But, some real bright folks got together and they thought, what if all this not democracy shit is actually incredibly cringe? What if this is actually not cool? What's happening right now? What if there's some sort of moral worth in people being free? Again, we're simplifying significantly.
Way too much oversimplifying it here, dude.
The Enlightenment was significant in that it was, over its course, a major turning point in how people perceived the relationship between the ruling class and the subservient class. And ideas began to flourish from Enlightenment thinkers. Ideas like universal education, which, of course, was one of the founding principles of the United States of America. And that's really crazy when you think about it.
Was it?
To think about societies going from the idea that
was
peasantry, they're literally like not even...
I don't know where it says that. Universal education? I don't think when did universal education start in the United States? Like, I don't know. Pretty sure, like, 19th century? I don't think they... Jeez, that was a funny one. I don't know where that came from.
Agents. They're not even, like, worthy. They're just
farm your crops, on TikTok dude, or something?
And then you go from that to people being given, like, a basic education. Literacy being taken as something that everybody should be able to have access to. Honestly, pretty fantastic. It was a huge, huge change.
Couldn't agree more. The Enlightenment is super interesting and super important. We're not talking about what's important about it, or connecting it to political philosophy right now, but
into conflict with these new ones. People are like academics. Like, you know how today academics are arguing over how fast America will sink into the ocean with climate change, and how much money poor people should be paid to not starve exactly? Like, this is the discourse going on today. Back in the day, these academics were legitimately discussing the extent to which individuals had the right to determine their own lives. Like, that was the discourse. And this is going to surprise you. That discourse got heated from time to time, A lot of the monarchy, the monarchical rule, they didn't really like the idea of the peasantry getting super, uppity, basically. People got pretty mad about that. We had a couple wars and a couple of revolutions. A few people died, A few people died. Yeah, basically, think of the Enlightenment era as like Twitter, but in real life, and all the bloodshed that would entail.
More like the French Revolution. That's actually kind of funny. Calling the French Revolution like the most toxic part of Twitter, but real life, it's unavoidable. Dude, Twitter would guillotine people if they could, for sure, man.
So, Among many principles that were sort of fielded during the Enlightenment,
We're done with the Enlightenment section, by the way.
And began to refer to what we today call liberalism. Liberalism is the
what has been the point of this, by the way? This has not been a very good rhetorical tool so far, this paint thing.
Global ideology today. While there
are
other
baby.
ones, and there are different variations on liberalism, liberalism is by far, without question, without competition, the
fold that L
right now.
Looks like a banana, dude. You just put two bananas together.
Like the League of Legends logo. Hey, actually, I feel the same way about liberalism as I do about League of Legends. So, taking the L. Let me describe liberalism to you.
Okay? And I'm ready. This is going to be interesting.
Honestly,
we're finally getting into it, folks.
Sounds pretty good, if you think about it. So, liberalism is described broadly by a set of beliefs, which could be
coming in here hot. Proto Zero. Coming in here hot. Abortions should be mandatory. Is that what you said? Thanks, man. You're not joking either. Abortion should be mandatory for who, dude? Thanks for coming into my Vaush streamer lord chat and just dropping your prolific abortion take, man. Tell me about it. What do you mean mandatory? Like, are we just ending the human race in 2 generations? Everyone, you're an antinatalist. I've heard about antinatalism. I have to be honest, I've really never investigated the position. If you would like to cite some interesting antinatalist literature or videos, I would actually put them on my watch later, and maybe we could watch them together later, man. Please consider following. I know that Jordan Peterson had an antinatalist debate once, and I heard that he actually lost it quite badly. I've kind of been afraid of watching an antinatalist debate in case the person I'm watching loses.
Characterized as.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in, man. I hope you're having a good afternoon, despite your antinatalist position. I don't imagine that antinatalists have a lot of good days. Like, I feel like you guys feel so bad about the world that it's really tough to enjoy things. Sorry about that.
And adherence to individual rights and values, and
I'm not trying to shit on you there either, dude.
Individualism broadly, of democracy, of free trade, of a removal of old autocracies.
I have no fucking idea what we're talking about now.
Actually, I feel the same way about liberalism as I do about League of Legends. So, taking the L.
Jill, I want to hear more about this antinatalism, okay? I'll stop the stream. I want to get into it.
Let me describe liberalism to you, okay? And it honestly sounds pretty good, if you think about it. So liberalism is described broadly by a set of beliefs, which could be characterized as an adherence to individual rights and values, and individualism broadly, of democracy, of free trade, of a removal of old autocracies, and a whole lot of beliefs associated broadly with the individual's ability to practically and freely live their lives however they want. I mean, we have the First Amendment here in the States. What is it?
That wasn't actually that bad. I was expecting a lot worse. Oh, here we go. Mainlander was the best antinatalist philosopher, but at the crux of the issue, antinatalism in a nutshell is the idea it is immoral. It is a moral evil to bring an unconsenting consciousness into the world. Most such suffering is the moral evil, but some think it's an evil in and of itself without suffering. Also, not every antinatalist is depressed, and even the depressed ones often still only view antinatalism philosophically and not as a response to their depression. Yeah, sorry, I really didn't mean to pigeonhole you there, man. I hope you didn't feel insulted by what I said there. Maybe I spoke a little too soon. Or a little too quickly. Like I said, I've never really heard of antinatalism. That is really interesting, man. And I will write that down. Like literally right now on stream after I took play.
Freedom of religion.
Mainlander, right?
That was a pretty novel idea, though there were many societies that were effectively practicing freedom of religion a very, very long time before Europeans came up with anything of the sort. But,
true.
Hey, we caught up eventually. These ideas, for the most part, maybe accepting free trade, which I'll get to in a second, are pretty...
So, yeah. It's immoral to... I kind of agree that bringing consciousness into the world without consent is a morally dubious decision. How do you get around it, though? It's like, yeah, your conclusion is that we have to eliminate all conscious life in the universe, and I would say that all conscious life in the universe, despite the fact that it was brought in without consent, would still mostly rather be here. And because they would revoke that consent now, we probably shouldn't have the goal of global elimination of consciousness as laudable. Yeah, thanks, man. I like talking to you.
Cool.
Consider following.
And I agree with a lot of them. But the belief in...
And yeah, we could watch a Mainlander. I don't know if he's a YouTuber. Did you say that? He's a philosopher. We could watch one of his videos or read some of his shit later.
Free trade was punctuated with another set of beliefs that came to be known as, when applied, capitalism. Essentially this, and I'll speak broadly here. Before our understanding of capitalism came to be what it is today, which could also be referred to as laissez-faire capitalism, we had mercantile capitalism.
Okay.
Mercantile capitalism was, rather than what we have today, where anybody can start a business and anybody can make it to be a Bill Gates or whatever. Theoretically, anyone can, really. I mean, today in America, it is true that hypothetically any one individual person could strike it and be...
Dude, how did he go over feudalism with such a broad brush and then draw the distinction between mercantile capitalism and, what do you want to say, modern capitalism? It's an interesting counterpoint. Most people being here, but that is only done post-birth, not an informed decision of the being before birth. At the very least, it's a better argument than the usual life is sometimes good, or I just wanted a little version of myself excuse for childbirth. Yeah, I agree with you that there's no way around the informed consent decision at birth. And I would also, like, even go farther to say that the problem isn't even birth. It's like, a human being isn't necessarily conscious for, like, I don't know, the first, like, 4 or 5 years of their life, right? Like, they don't have, like, self-consciousness. They can't identify, cogito ergo sum. And that means, like, that means that they can't make informed decisions. We also said that humans can't make informed decisions for, like, the first 18 years of their life. And even before you're self-conscious, like, you could live an entire existence, like 5 years worth, in horrible genetic pain from some disease you inherited without any consent, once again, man. And yeah, that's a rough deal, but most people who grow up eventually would rather stick around, and we're all still here. That's really all I have to say. Yo, hey, thanks for tuning in, man. You want to talk about why we should all get abortions with this guy?
Wealthy and powerful.
What am I doing? Oh, we're talking about why we should all get abortions with Proto Zero here, and we're also investigating the politics of this fine gentleman. Am I a Vaush fan? No. You think that there's more suffering than happiness? Yeah, that's a pretty politically valid position. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do right now? Okay, this stream's getting really off the rails. Any political streamers I do like. Ha! Nice, man. Any political streamers I do like, I would say, so I'm all about, you don't know me very well, but there's a YouTube channel linked down below where you can get to know me a little better. I would say I'm all about trying to find the political philosophy of the future by demonstrating the viability of liberalism in the 21st century, and it's really tough to find people doing that. I would also say that I'm not doing it. Like, I'm trying, man. I'm out here trying. The people who are closest, I would say, to finding the political philosophy of the future are Breaking Points with Crystal Ball and Saga and Jetty, that's like a left-right show where they talk about modern issues, and they actually really try and avoid the modern diametric spin that is pretty typical in American politics, and they try and reframe American political issues around class. I would also say that Andrew Yang and Marianne Williamson are both, they're not political commentators, they're political figures, which means we actually need to hold them at a higher level of accountability. But for political figures, Andrew Yang and Marianne Williamson are so far and above the entire American political establishment. Those are two people that I'm kind of inspired by. I know those aren't necessarily streamers, but those are the people that I find inspiring politically. And I'm a Breaking Points premium subscriber. Okay, sorry. And that happiness won't... I've never heard someone speak so much faster than Ben Shapiro. Well, thanks, man. You got me. I talk a little fast when I get excited, I guess. And that happiness won't outweigh a kid with cancer suffering. Yeah, man, it's a real problem that someone can live their entire life before developing consciousness, and be in pain, and also not have the right to take their lives away. It's a really complicated moral question. My only defense is that 99% of people don't have to deal with that problem, and not 99%, I'd say 80%. No, I'd say 90% of people don't have to deal with like problems of chronic illness before in the first like 6 years of their life, or the first maybe a smaller proportion in the first 18 years. But most of us get over that stuff, and we would still choose to rather be here at that age. But yeah, arguing antinatalism is tough. I have literally no experience doing it, so you're getting me off the cuff.
Though it is a mathematical certainty that the number of people who actually do so are very, very few. Yeah, bootstraps and the like. But ye back in the day, with mercantile capitalism, that wasn't necessarily the case. Usually businesses were either operated and deployed at the behest of the crown, or they worked directly with the empire to maintain the economic apparatuses that would be used for what was then colonialism, that the mercantile capitalism was usually about like businesses working together with empires to extract wealth.
This is true, by the way,
from colonized territories.
About mercantile capitalism, like I'd say early 18th century capitalism.
But it wasn't just like any random person.
Also, was not profitable, by the way. Mercantile capitalism and colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade largely were not super profitable or profitable at all, but required such large capital inputs and were so complicated to calculate out that all these empires thought that they were making money when they really weren't. And if you don't think that's true, you should look at how the British Empire dissolved because it ran out of money. On top of all the political issues that have faced in World War I, the empire became economically untenable.
Become like a multi-billionaire business mogul, that free association, that free right to trade, it just didn't exist back then. So these wonderful Enlightenment thinkers, they thought, what economic system would best complement, democracy? What economic system would best complement democracy, education, individual liberties? Well, surely it would be an economic system that allows free participation in the market. It makes sense if you think about it. But there are some issues with that.
Here we go.
There are tenets of liberalism that I like very much. I like the belief that individual freedom is something which
if I were Vaush right now, I would talk about positive freedom and negative freedom.
Valued.
That's where I would go.
Karl Marx was a great believer in freedom and democracy. Democracy, of course, being the political system by which freedom expresses itself, at least certainly compared to monarchies. I mean, whatever problems our democracies have, it's a little better than a monarchy, It's a step up. It's a step up. However slight it may feel sometimes, it is indeed a step up.
Oh, hey, man, thanks for tuning in. How's your afternoon going?
Talk about equality. A lot of people say Karl Marx was this, like, equality-obsessed communist. No. I mean, he did like communism, sure, but what he cared about most...
Oh, hey, thanks for following, man. You're really making my day.
Not equality. He felt that equality would arise because of freedom.
How's it going?
The reason we
if you're a new person, I can't see it.
Equality was because people weren't given the same types of freedom. Even if the laws apply equally to everyone.
Yeah, hey, man, thank you for following. That was really sweet.
Even today, they
Please stick around. And, I have a YouTube channel. Link down below if you want to check it out and get to know me a little bit better. I'm also writing a political platform about the province of Canada and how it should be better if you're interested in that as well. Yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in and thanks a lot for following, man.
During Marx's lifetime, America still
making my day.
Slavery. And he went to Lincoln asking Lincoln to get rid of that slavery, and then slavery was gotten rid of. Skipping a few steps here, but in short, Marx abolished slavery in the U.S. You're welcome. Or thank you, actually, since I'm not Marx, but I do live in the U.S. Yeah, cool, right? There were
everyone talks about the Marxist letter to Lincoln. Shut up about it, man.
Some people were very wealthy and powerful, and they had freedom that the poor classes did not have. What's that old quote? For both the rich and the poor, it is equally against the law to sleep beneath the bridge. You know that quote? It's a wonderful quote. It describes what sociologists like to refer to as systemic violence, which is an essential concept to understand if you want to, I guess, understand what's wrong with the world right now. Violence, the use of force from one agent to another, usually in return for something or to get something from them, is today less commonplace than it has ever been in all of human history.
True.
Ah, yes, that's the quote right there. The law in its majestic equality forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under the bridges, to beg in the street, and to steal bread. Exactly. It's a beautiful quote. It's fantastic.
Oh, we're starting to get
now,
there.
Today,
Positive and
right
negative
now,
freedom.
Let's say in America, we are at
Also, thanks for tuning in. If you're a new guy, how's your afternoon going? We're just coming up on the hour mark of streaming, and we're just over halfway into this video. I actually think I'm getting pretty darn good at React streaming. I like most React streams or videos that are like double the length of whatever they're reacting to, and it looks like that's a pace that I'm actually pretty good at keeping up with. Just by coincidence, I'm not doing it on purpose. If you can't tell, this is all improvised.
Record low level of violence in terms of random crimes, people dying off in war.
Your tablet died. Well, welcome back to the stream.
Safe period of time to live in. I mean, crime rates vary, year to year they jump. Right now, because of COVID, we're getting a little bit of a spike. But generally speaking, civilizationally, we are in a remarkably violent.
I got a follower while you were gone.
Free period.
Well, I mean, the guy who was here was following me before. Sorry, the guy who was here decided to follow me.
See, capitalism was, and I maintain this, some people don't want to acknowledge this, some leftists, but
I
maintain that the concept of capitalism integrated well with what was originally thought to be the best possible sociological package to ensure human liberty. I do believe that, yeah, initially. When
Interesting.
It was conceptualized.
I didn't know about
the
this
idea
from
of free
Vaush.
trade, everyone gets to participate in the market equally. The government only really sort of leans in on the borders, but they set the stage. But apart from that, people duke it out, and the best competitor comes out on top. Conceptually, I think that's wonderful, but there's a problem. There are actually a lot of problems, and we could talk about inequities and market failures all we want to, but the real problem, the heart of the problem, is that capitalism perpetuates the hierarchy that the Enlightenment had otherwise succeeded in advocating against.
Dude, you took a shot and you missed.
Because it is, I think, no exaggeration to
Let's hear it, though.
That the modern day wealthy, the very wealthy today, are a sort of modern aristocracy in the sense that they have a disproportionate amount of power over the society.
I do consider myself a fan of capitalism. I'm a libertarian, by the way. And yeah, like I just said, I'm not sure if I said it to you. No, I did just say it to you. If you want to find out a little bit more about my political ideology, you can click that YouTube channel for political essays and watch me take a political values test and find out that I'm actually not a libertarian. I'm a liberal. I lost my libertarian card. I'm looking to get it back eventually.
Over which they provide.
Definitely not a socialist.
That there is a hereditary component to their power, in the sense that they often have a direct line of contact with the rulers of our society, the politicians, or people in direct positions of power. There is an aristocratic element to it. Now, it's not directly lineage-based. I mean, it's not...
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Exactly.
Thank you, man. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate whenever anyone on Twitch goes to check out my YouTube videos. It's happened a couple of times.
Same, but the underlying tendencies remain similar. And whereas we once had...
You believe in anarcho-syndicalism. You're a doomer who knows none of us gets a real fucking say in how we're governed anyways. So, how does syndicalism differ from socialism or communism? I've always been very interested in this. You're a very anachronistic fellow. Antinatalist, anarcho-syndicalist. Yeah, a lot of people our age, well, I don't know if you're my age, man. A lot of people smoke weed and laugh as the roller coaster crashes and burns, but I'm trying to do something different these days.
Barons and lords who controlled vast swaths of territories where serfs just existed on and had to provide a great portion of their grain in order to continue living on that plot of land. Nowadays, we have a very small number of corporations that control a vast swath of smaller corporations, which themselves control...
Oh, I want to rewind a little bit.
But
talking about the aristocracy.
Tendencies remain similar for an aristocracy, in the sense that they have a disproportionate amount of power over the society over which they provide.
Tell me about syndicalism, though, dude. I want to hear about it. I'll come back to you in a second.
In the sense that there is a hereditary component to their power, in the sense that they often have a direct line of contact with the rulers of our society, the politicians, or people in direct positions.
Wait! Whoa. Wait! Have never been better politically connected to our leaders than any other time in history, and that is totally a product of liberalism and capitalism, not a deficiency or a bug.
Power, there is an aristocratic element to it. Now, it's not direct.
And I would even say that the commons have still a greater, like, it's very true. I mean, people will cite that Yale study, and I believe there's a bunch of other literature, but it also seems quite true. Just if you live in North American society, that the government is not good at advocating. The government is not good at following the policies that the people advocate for. There are so many policies that 75%, 60% of the American people are in favor of that just don't get passed. Like $15 minimum wage, for example. What's the Wigan Council? Oh, also, thanks for tuning in, man. How's your day going? Syndicalism is a form of socialism. Syndicalism and socialism are different from communism as in they have markets and cash, different from capitalism, in that the markets are owned by workers and organized by worker federations. Yeah, that sounds a lot like what Vaush is. He believes in, apparently, the decommodification of labor, which looks like it would take place on across a very similar set of lines as you just laid out there, good sir.
Directly lineage-based. I mean, it's not exactly the
Dude, what's the Wigan Council? Also, yeah, I'd really appreciate it if either of you guys thought about following me.
But the underlying tendencies remain similar. And whereas we once had, barons and lords who controlled...
The Taxi Man Alliance for Green Socialism just won 15 seats. Where, man? We're here to talk about capitalism, man.
Vast swaths of territories where serfs just existed on and had to provide aristocratic element to it. Now, it's not directly lineage-based. I mean,
No, Vaush is an idiot who doesn't know how to explain anarchism, much less syndicalism. He's a political fashionista. Interesting. First of all, political fashionista, dude, that was prime. I like that. No one has made an anarchist look dumber than Vaush. I didn't know that Vaush identified as a political anarchist. The only political anarchist I have... Where's the Wigan Council, dude? Like, what continent? You're talking to a Canadian here, man. Michael Malice is the only anarchist that I've ever encountered, and I actually just encountered him a couple of days ago on the Lex Friedman podcast, but I'm already on part 2. And thanks a lot for following, man. I hope you have a really good day.
It's not exactly the
I'm going
same.
to figure out where this Wigan Council is if you're going to follow me. English Metropolitan Borough. In London? No, looks like it's in West England. Next to Liverpool. And the Green Party wants some seats there, apparently. 15 seats? That is a lot, I have to say. Like, MPs? Or is it like a member of legislative assembly thing? I'm not sure if you guys have legislative assemblies. I don't know what you guys call your provincial... or I don't know what you call your non-federal legislatures in England. But please, let me know.
Underlying tendencies remain similar. And whereas we once had, barons and lords who controlled vast swaths of territories where serfs just existed on and had to provide a great portion of their grain in order to continue living on that plot of land.
That's not how feudalism works, really, but okay.
A very small number of corporations that control a vast swath of smaller corporations, which themselves
what the fuck?
Hundreds of thousands and millions of jobs, which you have to work at, or you get fired.
That was a terrible comparison.
You don't starve anymore, but you certainly don't live a good life if you can't adhere yourself to the expectations of these corporations. And what I am describing right now, this work or starve attitude, is systemic violence. It's a kind of violence which is...
Yeah, there's no systemic violence involved in your system, dude. No, not at all.
Indirect, and therefore...
It's not like an economic system based on universal consent would be less coercive than the system that he's talking about.
Difficult.
That'd be crazy, man. Wouldn't it? That'd be crazy.
Anyone for. And in many ways, that's actually the point. If a direct act of violence is committed from one person to another, it's very easy to point that out and go, stop. You're arrested. It's very direct. But what if you're in a position, let's say, you're a factory worker, 100 years ago, and you're born in a
labor theory of value
somewhere in like the slums of New York.
Oh man, I forgot to ask. Is my audio good, by the way? Is like Vaush perfect volume, and am I perfect volume? I could totally change it. I almost never get the opportunity to check my audio balancing on Twitch, so I'd really appreciate your input.
You don't have the money to move. In fact, you're actually in a little bit of debt because...
Let's rewind a little bit.
Arrested. It's very direct.
We're just doing the labor theory of value, though, right?
Let's say, you're a factory worker, 100 years ago, and you're born in a series of tenements somewhere in like the slums of New York. And you don't have the money to move. In fact, you're actually in a little bit of debt because you needed food
Oh,
and
thank
you're
you,
not
man.
paid very much.
Oh, also
You
thank you
could
for
get
tuning in.
another job,
Up to 4
but
viewers now.
the job you currently work takes up 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So I don't know if you can get another job on top of that. I don't know
Thanks for the lit as well.
easy the flex hours worked back then. You know what I mean? And your job doesn't really pay enough to support your family. Like, it's the family that you have. What do?
Vaush is kind of like a walking. Vaush does look exactly like you kind of imagine a Redditor, and like I'm a really skinny guy. Vaush is like a thicker guy. He gives me especially when he was in his ponytail phase. He has a new haircut now, but yeah, he looks like such a man child.
Well,
Although, look at his giant beard. I'm very jealous of his beard. I think that he has a much better beard than me. Look at how like full it is. Also, he maintains it a lot better. Abandon all hope and become furry, says Master Dodo 15. Thanks, man.
you can
Clearly, the politics topic in Twitch is where I belong. Abandon all hope and become furry. Can I like make you a mod or something? Yeah, dude. I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I should make someone who has literally never. I don't know, man. I'm just gonna follow you. I'll just follow you back for saying such a banger. I'm not a furry, man, but that was fucking hilarious.
debt yourself further. Your children can go into work if they're old enough and
Do you think you could be a mod in my chat, dude?
contribute to the family income.
If you follow me, maybe. No, I'm not gonna
In
make
all
you a mod if you
likelihood,
follow me.
whatever
I don't even know what mods do on Twitch. I only have fucking 15 followers.
you take, there is going to be a monumental
Maybe you'll ban some of these
misery
people.
in your life. But why? I mean, really, like, why?
Where were we, by the way?
Well,
I kind of got
really
stomached by starve or become abandon all hope and
It's the
become
family
furry.
that you have paid very much. You could get another job, but the job you currently, you're a factory worker,
Sorry for
100
rewinding
years
so much.
ago, and you're born in a series of tenements somewhere in like the slums of New York.
Also, thanks for
You
being
don't
here,
have the
guys.
money to
I'm having
move.
fun. I hope
In
you are
fact,
too.
you're actually in a little bit of debt because you needed food and you're not paid very much. You could get another job, but the job you currently work takes up 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So I don't know if you can get another job on top of that. I don't know how easy the flex hours worked back then. You know what I mean?
72 hours a week.
Your job
Ouch.
doesn't really pay enough to support your family. Like, it's the family that you have. What do? Well, you can indebt yourself further. Your children can go into work if they're old enough and contribute to the family income. In all likelihood, whatever path you take, there is going to be a monumental amount of misery in your life. But why? I mean, really, like, why?
Do I like chicken? Yeah, man. I like chicken.
They didn't have to be miserable. I mean, the advent of the Industrial Revolution increased the productivity of humanity. It didn't decrease it. There was wealth and food and space enough to go around. It was entirely possible for everyone in that time to live a better existence than many of those, tenement factory workers did back then. Why is there misery when there doesn't have to be?
Yeah, it's just human greed and exploitation that stopped us all from establishing a utopia instantly in the 18th century.
Leads to that misery. Why are there homeless people in the United States? Lord knows we have enough money and space to take care of them. If we really wanted to, we could fix it very, very quickly. It's a logistical problem that our country is more than capable of handling, but it doesn't. But we
That's
continue
true. Well, I mean,
raising
sort
the
of. I mean,
military,
we can make homes for homeless people. I don't know if you can solve homelessness.
funding every year. Why? Why does that happen? Nobody's having a gun pointed at their head, at least not to begin with. But violence, or at least harm being committed against people because of the actions of other people, in this case, business owners, legislators, whatever, is still taking place.
Systemic violence from politicians and business owners, but no systemic violence from however you guys want to establish a socialist revolution. Really?
Monopoly on legitimate interpersonal violence held by the state allows them to inflict actual violence on you if you transgress against social rules for long enough. If you're homeless in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could end up being arrested. If you 100 years ago were in deep enough debt as a factory worker, you could be put in debtor's prison. And
Yep.
all of this,
Both of those things are true.
not because the homeless person or the factory worker was any...
We really shouldn't. I agree with Vaush here that we shouldn't just punish homeless people for being homeless. It really doesn't do anything about homelessness.
more lackadaisical or any less intelligent than any of their compatriots.
It's not a flaw with
Reality
capitalism,
isn't
though.
Really. It's just how the dice fell when they were born. Which zip code were they born into? Which family? Were their parents wealthy? Were their parents poor? Did their mother have a drug habit? Yes or no? Did they have a genetic predisposition to alcoholism? It's not fair, is it? I believe, and this is another one of those personal beliefs of mine,
I was going to be really, really happy about this. What does he believe?
We should reduce, to the greatest possible extent, systemic violence. That we should eliminate it as much as possible.
We should put this guy in charge.
That's what I believe. A lot of what I advocate for is about that belief. It's not really about equality in so much as it's about giving everyone the opportunity to succeed or fail on the best possible terms, on even terms, so we can really see who's winning. I mean, we get this in athletics, after all. All the runners start at the same line, or actually they started a tiered system of lines because
so that's funny.
circumferences expand if you go further out from the
Yeah.
center.
That was funny. That was funny.
We get the desire for fairness. That's something we believe in, something we take into account when we design these things. So capitalism, at least in my opinion, doesn't succeed in its promise. It doesn't succeed in what it's supposed to do, which is to maximize human liberty. Instead, it perpetuates human hierarchy, human inequality, to a great extent. From liberalism, we get capitalism.
Damn, dude. I gotta hear that again.
To maximize human liberty. Instead, it perpetuates human hierarchy, human inequality, to a great extent. From liberalism...
You were going to establish universal human liberty, universal human good, without a hierarchical system. That's crazy. That's crazy. Guys, listen. There's still 20 minutes left in this video. We're total 18 plus 12. There's still 30 minutes left in this video. We're totally good. We got it. Let's go.
Predominant global
universal liberalism, universal happiness, no hierarchy.
Economic system. Pay no mind to people who accuse the Scandinavian succeed in its
One more time.
It doesn't succeed in what it's supposed to do, which is to maximize human liberty. Instead, it perpetuates human hierarchy, human inequality, to a great extent. From liberalism, we get capitalism, which is now the predominant global economic system. Pay no mind to people who accuse the Scandinavian countries, China, Russia, or whatever else of being socialist countries. They are certainly not. They may have different levels of government involvement, but no, they are all capitalist countries, and they operate based on the same set of rules. But
is China closer to socialism than capitalism these days? It's actually a tough one to say. I would still put them closer to socialism. And they're an explicitly socialist/communist country. So, still. Although, Marx, Stalin, Lenin, and Mao would be absolutely rolling in their graves if they saw socialism with Chinese characteristics in the 21st century being played out. Although I also think that maybe that was a little bit too far. I've heard some interesting political analysis from former Chinese nationals in Canada about how maybe those figures, if they saw China today, would still be proud of their country's resurgence despite their compromises on the ideological purity of socialism. Mao especially. This was who the conversation that I had that I had with this person focused on the most. He, in this person's opinion, always viewed socialism as a means to an end for bringing the Chinese people back to greatness, not necessarily the end itself. And so maybe he would be okay with socialism with Chinese characteristics in 2022, but I am skeptical of that. And I'm sure that Lenin and Stalin would be absolutely furious at this state of socialism in China.
Capitalism's continued existence for the past 100 years, several hundred years.
Oh yeah, baby. Still going, capitalism.
Has made some people very mad, very sad, and very mad. And people in their sadness and madness have attempted to address the problems of capitalism with their own solutions in a wide variety of ways. I want to talk about two of those ways: socialism and fascism. or as the cool kids call it, socialism or barbarism. This is a belief held amongst many political radicals. It's a belief that I hold myself to this day, that there are some inconsistencies within capitalism, some internal antagonisms in a dialectical sense. You can read Hegel if you want to learn more about that. Actually,
hey, thanks for tuning in, man.
Just Google
dialectic. Hope you're having a good afternoon.
That will lead inevitably to people with different political perspectives sort of grabbing the steering wheel and moving society as they see fit. We have socialists, and socialists' prescriptions for the world are similar to the ones that I've described for you right now. An insistence on systemic problems, that there are systemic solutions to systemic problems, that there is a underlying current of violence behind capitalism and behind the society in which we live. And it can be fixed. It can be fixed if we are diligent and if we distribute public resources well. Now, what this isn't is collectivism. I don't know how this term collectivism hit the public zeitgeist the way that it has, but I want to be perfectly clear, okay? Marx's ideas about society were anything but collectivist.
Interesting.
If you want to think about collectivism, okay, if you want to identify collectivism, look at a nationalist. Look at somebody who demands children stand for the flag.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever heard anyone on the left try and say that Marxists were socialist or collectivist ideologies. But this is interesting.
When the Pledge of Allegiance is sung or spoken at the beginning of every school day. Take a look at many
that shit's fucked up, by the way. What the fuck are you doing in America? Don't do the Pledge of Allegiance. Daddy's fascistic and totalitarian every morning. Are you kidding me, man?
Religious groups, especially fundamentalist, orthodox, or evangelical religious groups. These are collectivists. These are people who have a very strong group identity, and their group identity often eclipses their individual identity. The core of social...
Proletarian versus bourgeoisie? No, we're not gonna. That was a really weird pronunciation of bourgeoisie. I think it was the first time I said it on this channel, so I just like to clear that up. It's not actually how I say bourgeoisie. No, there's nothing collectivist about that, though. There's nothing collectivist about that dynamic.
Capitalism is deeply individualist in all of the best ways.
Oh yeah.
Individual rights and a repudiation.
Oh, that's what it's all about.
Individualist.
That's what socialism is all about. Individual rights. It's actually in the name. Socialism.
That is to say, you promote the individual, you champion the rights of the individual, the freedoms of the individual, but you don't delude yourself into believing that all the problems in the world are caused by individuals.
And you don't maximize the power of the individual by establishing a system of universal consent. You actually do it by revoking universal consent. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I know that an inherently collectivist name like socialism would have you think that it's a collective philosophy, but it's actually an individualist one about maximizing choice. It's not about taking it away fairly.
Being lazy workers or individuals being dumb. No. Individual rights, systemic solutions.
Also without hierarchy. I forgot to mention we're still doing all of this without hierarchy.
In my opinion, it's a really good way to look at the world. And then you've got fascism. Oh, whoops. How do we get there?
Is fascism everything but you?
For any length of time, you probably know my opinions of fascism. I mean, biases and all that.
I've not watched Vaush for a very long time. I've actually intentionally kind of stayed away from all of his allegedly fascist/Nazi debate things because he does a lot of them, and I think it's like a really boring thing to debate about.
Not a huge fan.
Not necessarily boring. It's just not what I'm interested in.
Fascists are...
Dude, capitalism is what socialism versus fascism.
Well, it's difficult to describe fascism because fascism is idiosyncratic. That is to say, it pulls from many sources. And
True.
It's also deliberately incoherent. In the sense that if you speak to a fascist, or if you ask a fascist what they believe, there's often an undercurrent of anti-intellectualism that will prevent them from being able to give you a complete view of what it is they believe. But I think Umberto Eco's essay on Ur-Fascism, which lists 14 points that describe broadly what fascists tend to be like, is the best description we have presently.
Never read that essay, by the way, unfortunately.
If you want a really, really simple explanation, think of it as highly anti-intellectual, ultra-nationalism with a slant towards xenophobia and traditional values. That's kind of the gist of it. Basically, they believe that individual rights, that a promotion of individuality has led to degeneracy, that it's led to individuals being morally repugnant. Usually they think this is, I don't know, interracial marriage or gay people having sex. That tends to be what they cite, as examples of individual degeneracy. And they believe that the solution to this is to double down on a set of very collectivist, very traditionalist hierarchical values that they believe are the core tenets of society: the family, the state, the military, masculinity. Basically, it's very hierarchical and very traditional. And in the interest of fairness, I will say this: what fascists believe at their core is usually motivated by a fear. And that fear of otherness, of alienation, of emasculation, of brown people, of being cucked, whatever, that fear usually stems from some
Boss professor of sophistry at Wikipedia U. Yeah, that was funny, man. Was that sophistry? I have to go back.
Legit problems with how
I don't want to go back though.
Societies tend to organize themselves.
I'm not sure how long you've been tuning in, man. His definition of capitalism is that his social description of a capitalist society is literally socialists and fascists. It's not very good.
Usually fascist movements originate from economically anxious times where people feel uncertain about the future of their country, and there's a prevailing narrative that somehow the people of your nation are being victimized or played for fools by something, some group, usually a racial.
Are we almost done with the fascism section? Yeah, we are.
And that the best way to deal with these anxieties is to repudiate, to reject the atomization, the hyper-individualism that group has pushed upon the people of your country. To double down on love of God, country, state, family.
Vaush, the Beverly Hills socialist who feels guilty about his wealthy background. Yeah.
Race. Many of them believe that too.
I don't know if Vaush feels guilty about his wealthy background.
I don't think this is a great solution to society's problems, which is the reason why fascist governments almost always torpedo.
I've honestly never heard Vaush talk very much about his past. I just know that he is from Beverly Hills, and I believe he comes from a higher income situation.
Torpedo themselves and their states into a burning crater. They do a very poor job.
I think he went to Berkeley for sociology. I know he has a degree in sociology.
Of meaningfully addressing the problems that they actually intend to solve. And while data on this is shaky, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that fascist governments historically have not really improved the material well-being of the people who live within them. It's generally...
I don't like socialist governments, which always increase the wealth of their people.
I feel like on average they're a little bit of a drain on human happiness. Now, I've said a lot more about fascism in the past than this. A lot more.
Oh, man. I love this. Capitalism is when socialism and fascism...
Most of the political discourse that you're going to see online is going to be between these three groups, or at least people who associate broadly with these three groups, okay? So when you see America First types talking about globalists and destroying America with immigration, that would
most of the political commentary you're going to see on American politics is between socialists and fascists about capitalism.
Point against capitalist, okay? When you hear people talking about how, border camps are going to be the beginning of the American Fourth Reich and how brown people are soon going to, be led up to camps, you're usually hearing arguments from socialists or from capitalists against fascists.
Okay.
And so on and so on.
So capitalism is a faction here. It's not solely that socialism and fascism are the entire set of factions under capitalism. That's good to know.
Some iteration of arguments against all of these groups. Capitalists will tend to call socialists financially irresponsible.
Also, thanks for tuning in, man. I hope you have a really good day.
They'll usually accuse them of being young or inexperienced, which in many cases they tend to be. Good-hearted, though, mind, at least many of you. And capitalists will usually refer to fascists. Well, it depends. Depending on how wealthy that capitalist is, or no, I should speak a little more.
I wonder how he separates fascism and capitalism.
Specifically. Depending on how much that capitalist would benefit from fascism, the response tends to vary. There were many corporations during Nazi Germany that benefited tremendously from their close association with the Nazi Party. And Hitler himself.
I think he's meh all around, although the cat was horrible to him. Yeah, I haven't done any of the research on the Vaush Cat Black controversy. Do I even want to say anything about it after I said I haven't done any of the research? Yeah, I don't know anything about the relationship. yeah, I don't know. I don't want to talk about Vaush's relationship status. Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to get into it. It seems like maybe some sort of pattern might have developed since I started watching Vaush about his sexual interactions with women online and how he talks about women online. But we'll talk about that maybe like 4 or 5 hours from now, or 10 hours from now, after he gets to know Vaush.
In favor of the free market, he deregulated many of these businesses and engaged in an act of.
Who did?
Depending on how much that capitalist would benefit from fascism, the response tends to vary. There were many corporations during Nazi Germany that benefited tremendously from their close association with the Nazi Party.
True.
And
Volkswagen, for example,
was very much in favor of the free market. He
I wouldn't go that far.
Deregulated many of these businesses and engaged in an act of privatization. That is to say, handing these businesses the keys over to private enterprise.
He also believed that the state needed to restrict people's access to the free market based on race, which, isn't a very free market idea. He also believed that property rights shouldn't apply to racial minorities, which is, not a very free market idea. And he also believed that the government had the right to pick winners and losers in the economy, which is not a very capitalist idea.
As long as they worked closely with
or free market idea,
businesses
I should say.
Very well under.
Oh, hey, man, thank you for following.
But it wasn't really capitalism because it wasn't
making my day. Thanks a lot.
Market. You had to work in tandem with the state. It was more than capitalism. It was, maybe you could call it, capitalism in decay.
Still to this day, the fact that Vaush has an audience is like a secret motivation for me. If a guy like Vaush could build an audience, then I could do it too. Yeah, well, it's an interesting conversation to have with 3 people viewing me and 15 followers or 16 followers now. Thank you so much, by the way. I'm really glad that people like what we're doing here. I was really nervous about doing the stream today before I started it, but clearly you guys like it, and I don't think I've embarrassed myself too severely. Yeah, we'll keep going. Yeah, we live in a time where political commentary needs to change. Dude, here's what I would say. What really surprised me is that someone with, this is a little bit spoilers for later, but someone with such chronic neoliberal takes like Destiny or David Pakman could actually survive. Yeah, it's really, really remarkable to me that happens. 1 second.
What this looks like right here, what I'm doing right here, it looks like I'm trying to set up a political compass. You've all seen this, I assume? Or maybe subreddits built around this. We've all seen something to this.
Sorry, my girlfriend texted me.
Well, chat's not working right now, but I imagine you have. This is called a political compass. A political compass is a way of...
We're almost done, by the way, aren't we?
How would you describe it? Of mathematically,
20 more minutes.
Geographically triangulating a set of political positions, What are you? Oh, I'm auth-right. I'm lib-left. I'm auth-left. I'm lib-right. And while there is some descriptive utility to these positions, in reality, I think that the idea of a political compass encourages a lot of laziness. It's actually it's not just reductive, it's flat out inaccurate.
I kind of largely agree. I would say that if you want to rag on the if you want to rag on the political compass, I'd say it's so much better than the political spectrum. Like complicating things by adding a y-axis, makes things way more complicated, and actually kind of like lets us have conversations about our political positions a lot easier. But yeah, it is a politically insufficient tool. If you want to figure out someone's ideology, you should ask them what their positions are on certain issues. Even I find more in 2022 than any other time, even an ideological definition like conservative or libertarian or socialist, they really have lost almost all their meaning in the modern day. Strange.
It just doesn't make sense if you actually think about it for a little while. For example, you talk about lib-left and lib-right unity, or off-left and off-right unity, or lib-left, off-left, or lib-right and off-right. And it feels like what's really happening there when you talk about stuff like...
Lib-unity, by the way, totally in favor of that. I love the bottom half of the political spectrum. Those are my boys.
Is you're memifying...
and my girls, I guess. I don't see a lot of girls talking about politics online.
Political positions down to a set of identifiers or basic characteristics, and then you're extrapolating from them the graph.
Oh, hey, man, thanks for tuning in. Hope you're having a good afternoon.
That is to say, the political positions arrived before the graphs.
Sorry, I want to rewind a little bit.
About
sorry,
it's
guys.
not just reductive; it's flat out inaccurate. it just doesn't make sense if you actually think about it for a little while.
I think I just said this pretty much right.
For example, you talk about like
at this point, it should be obvious that Vaush is just a character that Ian plays on the internet. I totally disagree with you. You might know Vaush better than me, but I don't think that he's playing a character at all. I think that Vaush is Vaush. I think he's the same all the time. I like watching political commentary and streams, but right now people are talking about Roe, and it's getting a little bit boring. Well, thank you for tuning in. We're not talking about Roe here. We're going to spend like the next 4 or 5 hours only watching Vaush videos so that we get to know this guy a little bit better, and so that people will have a place to get to know him. I found no place on the internet that's like, this is where you should start with Vaush. This is where you should start with Destiny. This is where you should start with Hassan. And that's what I'm making. I'm going to post this on Twitch, and it's going to be posted to the YouTube channel that's linked down below. Well, the past stream YouTube channel. You guys should check it out. And yeah, you'll be able to send it to people who you want to introduce to these people, and we're also going to be putting right-wing streamers on it eventually. I say we, it's really just me. It's a one-stop shop out here.
And lib-right unity.
Also, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Unity. I really had fun talking to you guys today.
Off-left or lib-right and auth-right. And it feels like what's really happening there when you talk about stuff like this is you're memifying political...
I like Hassan more than I like Destiny, and more than I like Vaush.
Discourse. You're simplifying very complicated political positions down to a set of identifiers or basic characteristics, and then you're extrapolating from them the graph around which they're built. That is to say, the political positions arrived before the graphs used to describe them. Not all political compass tests are bad. I think that 8 values is generally pretty good.
Yeah, I like that one. I actually think that one is good.
It actually has 16 distinct positions or directions you can move in, I believe.
Oh, also, like the 8 values test is so much better questions, and you can give the 8 values test to like a beginner who like doesn't know about politics and like talk it out with them, and it's such a super helpful tool for helping them engage with politics. I really, really like the 8 values test.
Or no, just have.
It's the best attempt at a political compass ever made, I would say. So much better than exponentially better. Maybe by a factor of 10.
4, 8? I forget exactly, but it's not the little funny man squares or anything like that. The main reason that they don't work, I think, is because there are
Hassan is a socialist frat bro. He uses socialism to get wealthy and get bitches. Yeah, I kind of agree that when it comes to the holy trinity of online left streamers, Hassan is by far the least intellectually rigorous and by far the least rhetorically explorative. You know what I mean? He's explicitly not interested in debating people. And yeah, his understanding of socialism, I mean, compared to other prominent left-wing streamers, is like baby, toddler.
Actually.
But he's the most popular political content maker right now, so you should pay attention to why he is, and maybe it says something about the political situation and what it takes to be politically successful in the modern day, that speaking simply, honestly, and passionately gets you more views than this. Oh, dude, Hassan's chat can be toxic to AF sometimes. Yeah, that's kind of like the best part about it.
3 principal acts.
Hassan's chat is actually like fun to look at because it's so nuts. Because there's like 40,000 people in there. Where do these people come from? I never had political figures growing up. I had rock stars. CryptoKinetic says. Like, what do you mean, where do these people come from? People, I'd say my generation is the most like politically obsessed, politically active generation in a super long time. Oh, wow, we have another person tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, man. I'm almost out of water. 9-axis is better in my opinion. Yeah, I'm actually going to take the 9-axis test soon. I've been saving it. Like I said, I don't know if you can watch below. I took the 8-axis test a couple of weeks ago. I think maybe on April 10th. So around a month ago now. And I got a liberal, which really disappointed me. I identify as a libertarian, and I want to take the 9-axis test and see if I can't get my libertarian card back.
Axes along which you should.
Also, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you're having a really good day.
So here's a question for you guys, okay? The top down means auth, right? Auth, left, lib, left, auth, right, lib, right. So
also, doesn't 9-axis have the same developers? Yeah, it's not for people who are new to politics.
It refers to state control, I assume. Where up here you would have a dictator and down here you would have an anarchist, I imagine. Okay. And then left and right refer to how much your market is, free as opposed to controlled. So the ultra libertarians would be over here, like capitalists, and then over here you would have socialists. So if that's the case,
no,
where does
you'd have socialists at the top left,
liberalization
man.
versus political radicalization happen?
Excuse
then
me?
Over here you would have socialists.
How are you putting socialists in the bottom left? It's something that really frustrates me about socialists. There are some bottom left socialists, I would say, but Vaush, for example, Hassan, for example, anyone who wants to have a revolution and a top-down system that's not based on consent, is not in the bottom left, is in bottom half of the spectrum, and we should kick them out of it if they claim to be.
So if that's the case, where does political liberalization versus political radicalization happen? If the people up here...
This is such a bad take.
The people down here, anarchists. The people over here, socialists. And the people over here, capitalists. Where does hating black people fit on this scale? Does that make you more of a dictator? Well, no. I mean, memes aside, there are plenty of people in this circle right here who seem to hate black people. Where does that fit exactly?
This is not a bad
criticism.
criticism.
Political or social liberalism fit in versus reactionary positions? It actually doesn't fit in this chart if you think about it. You can try to...
Well, it sort of does. Like, what you want to do about those things, like what we were talking about earlier. What you actually want to do about those things, prescriptive versus, what did it say? Prescriptive versus normative? Is versus odd. This thing describes your odd position, but won't describe your is position.
To squeeze it in, but it doesn't work.
Sorry, other way around? No.
This chart doesn't.
This will describe your opposition, not your is position.
And if you actually think about it, this whole scale, this spectrum, doesn't really seem to work that much at all. I mean, there are a lot of libertarian right people who have...
Don't you dare! I can't believe you put quotes around libertarian right. Go ahead, put those quotes on your side of the spectrum, asshole. He's not an asshole.
You actually press them just a little bit. Are like auth-right. Ben Shapiro is an example. Ben Shapiro claims to be a libertarian.
Yeah, I'm with you here, man.
To ban pornography, promote like religious rights and
100%.
Like religious.
Racism has been many things, but if I had to throw a dart, it would be a mechanism of empire and classism. Did racism predate empire or class? I would say yes. I would honestly say that ancient human beings had way more reasons to be suspect of other ethnicities than we do today, and if there is a historical basis to racism, it is probably has to do with the fact that like racial mixing and cultural interaction that occurred in the ancient world had a much higher risk, and therefore it's sort of been like evolutionarily baked into us, maybe a little bit, but like I really don't subscribe to that argument very little bit. But if I had to, sorry, I don't really subscribe to the argument at all. If I wanted to posit an answer to where racism would come from, I would probably say it's that. But yeah, I really don't think what I just said is sufficient. I don't think that the root of racism is imperialism or class, though. I'd say I'm closer to the root of racism than you are, but of course I would say that.
Or like a religious hierarchy in society, and he's deeply in support of like authoritarian conservative control of the state. So is he a libertarian? Well, no.
Shakespeare's not a libertarian.
No. Well, I've met actual conservative libertarians, but they also tend to be in favor of a lot of the stuff that authoritarian conservatives engage in with regards to like welfare programs, which leads to a reduction of human equality in a way that is what exactly? I don't think that these labels work. And I think the more you think about them, the less they actually work. Another good example of this would be authoritarian leftists, like the people who tend to defend China. Now, this is a contentious position of mine, but I do sincerely believe this. I believe that many of the people who are super out to defend Russia or the USSR or China act indistinguishably from a lot of fascists because they seem to enjoy more than anything else the military propaganda, the state power, the aesthetic of the Soviet Union, strong-shouldered men with chiseled jaws
I kind of agree.
forward as they gather grain from the collective or whatever. But these aesthetics are not egalitarian or socialist in nature. If anything, they're the opposite. The idea
Makes you think about what anti-racism does? Yeah, man. I think a lot about what anti-racism does, too.
of sterling military authority figures represented by 6'2" white guys with square jaws collecting resources from what are essentially like modern peasantry, that doesn't really gel with my understanding of socialism. If anything, it seems like a promotion of class collaborationism, which is a fascist idea. That is to say, the party leaders who rule over society are actually super duper just one of you common workers, fellow USSR comrades. Thank you very much. We're actually just one and the same. Hey.
Hey, you know what? Let's hear Vaush's critique of pantheism. I really was paying attention there.
Jaws staring exactly. I don't think.
Oh, so thanks for tuning in, man. Hope you're having a good afternoon.
And I think the more you think about them, the less they actually work. Another good example.
I agree with him in principle here. Like, the political compass is like an elementary tool for like beginning political interaction and negotiation, not a high level tool for actually participating in those things at the professional level. The ideological terms we have themselves are still necessary to have all those debates for sure, though.
Example of this would be authoritarian leftists, like the people who tend to defend China. Now, this is a contentious position of mine, but I do sincerely believe this. I believe that many of the people who are super out to defend Russia or the USSR or China act indistinguishably from a lot of fascists because they seem to enjoy more than anything else the military propaganda, the state power, the aesthetic of the Soviet Union, strong.
Yeah, I agree that those labels are definitely practical.
Shouldered.
That's what I just said.
Chiseled jaws staring forward as they gather grain from the collective or whatever. But these aesthetics are not egalitarian or socialist in nature. If anything, they're the opposite. The idea of sterling military authority figures represented by 6'2" white guys with square jaws collecting resources from what are essentially like modern peasantry, that doesn't really gel with my understanding of socialism. If anything, it's...
I would say this critique applies much more to the PRC than it does to the USSR, which was way more explicitly dedicated to socialism and all the ways that it produced socialist inequities. PRC kind of abandoned those.
Seems like a promotion of class collaborationism, which is a fascist idea. That is to say, the party leaders who rule...
Class collaborationism is... Okay, how's class collaborationism different from class consciousness? Or vanguardism?
Society are actually...
What are you talking about?
We're just one of you common workers, fellow USSR comrades. Thank you very much. We're actually just one and the same. Hey, don't worry about it. So, are they fascists? Well, no, fascists hate the USSR. So what gives? I don't think that you can get any real descriptive value from these ideas, okay? I think there's actually just one real political compass, okay? It's super reductive, but it's also, in my opinion, the one that really matters.
Is it people who agree with Vaush and people who disagree with Vaush? Is it socialists and fascists?
Okay? And
let's see, folks.
Compass is a line, and it's hierarchy versus equality.
Crazy, man. It's not bad.
I have found, in my talking with people and arguing my positions and believing the things that I believe, that the most consistent, the most explanatory, the most descriptive way of describing people's political positions is whether they hinder or help human equality.
What are you laughing at, man?
Whether they liberate humans or restrict them. This falls in line with a very fundamental reactionary versus...
Can you have both? Yeah, obviously our societies are built of both. I don't think that's what he's contending here.
Politically liberal tenant.
Actually, he is contending. He is actually nuts enough to think that you can actually create a socialist society without any hierarchy. Sorry.
That
you're right, I'm wrong. It's good for students and people who are new to politics. It's a good tool to get people out of left-right thinking. I agree completely, man. You are right on the money there.
Should rule over others or should not. There are many people, fascists are the extreme example of this, but... Yeah,
like, here's what I'll say, like, multiple times, like, I'd say over half a dozen times, I have had someone... Oh, I hope you didn't hear that, I just pressed the mute button on my headset. I've had conversations with people who are like, I'm interested in politics, but I don't know how to get into it, and I don't know what I should research, and I'm like, hey, man, just go to this website, we'll answer a couple of these questions together, and you'll see it's actually a lot easier to figure out your political beliefs than you necessarily think. And you can always change them later. So the 8 values test is totally a good place to have some people establish their political identity, get a little bit of political confidence. I totally like it.
Many others do believe this as well. They believe that humans are naturally either politically worthy of power or not, and that societies function best when humanity is organized like
Aw, thanks, man.
a sharp.
I don't know. The test. How long did the test take me? Like 90 minutes or something. I looked at all the other videos after I did it, and everyone else did it like 25 minutes or less.
Pyramid, where you have people on top and people in the middle and the people on the bottom. And then there were people who believed that society would be better if the pyramid was as flat as possible. If the common people,
this is nuts,
bottom, really weren't that far away from the points of power at the top.
It's cool to see how a socialist justifies everyone is equal to me, but come on, man, there are two types of people in society: those who want to create hierarchies and those who want to destroy them. And the people who want to enforce the hierarchies are bad because hierarchies do bad things, and the people who want to destroy the hierarchies are good because hierarchies are bad.
Well, the enlightenment.
Sorry, was I a little bit too mean there? I did try and say at the beginning of the stream I was going to come here with an open mind.
How do you get more hierarchical than that? You've got divine blood or you don't. Or actually, it's
you want open source AI to control my life? I would let hackers burglarize me? What the fuck are you talking about, man?
It's like this, and like the monarchies up here, and then you have the aristocracy, and then you have the peasantry, Like, yikes. But democracies don't really function like that. Leadership in democracy, I mean, technically they serve us. That's what they're supposed to do. That's their role. So they're up here, sure, but they're meant to be accountable. They're closer to us. In my mind, capitalism is inequitable in large part because the way our economy works gives an ungodly number of resources to a very small number of people on the top.
Technocracy.
We can't even touch them. The amount of wealth inequality in
what about
America
it, man?
today is greater than it ever has been, and it's like near the Pharaoh levels. I mean,
I played a lot of Civ 2. I'm way more of a Civ 5 guy, though, not really a Civ 6 guy.
You can imagine the Egyptian pharaohs sitting upon their crowns of their thrones of gold or whatever, and then you have all the slaves and peasants outside, and that's where we're at, basically, when it comes to wealth distribution, more so than anything else.
This is a terrible analysis, but I'm not going to get into it right now.
I've talked a lot about this, and this may all seem very esoteric, but these are the fundamental beliefs that I use to organize my thought process when I'm thinking politically. When I think about ideas or values, when I think about whether or not I like a thing, whether or not I like a position, whether or not I'm fond.
Unjust hierarchies are bad, but his political spectrum is literally from how he lays it out here: all hierarchy bad, no hierarchy good.
Of X or Y.
All hierarchy inherently coercive. Yeah, he literally said that the ideal political system is one without hierarchy. I really hope that I'm not misremembering what he said there.
Please try to think of it in relation to these very basic principles. Essentially, how do I draw my beliefs and positions back to an axiomatic value that I hold? This right here. And also, how does this discourse contribute to the fundamental war between,
this was super interesting, though, wasn't it?
Equality and inequality, between hierarchy and liberation. How do these relate? What's the relationship between these factors? Everything that I think of, all the political beliefs that I hold, all the policy discussions I engage in, they all come from that first and foremost. That's the bedrock of my political thinking. That's what I get it all from, If you want to learn more about any of these ideas, this is going to sound really reductive, but I encourage you, unironically, go look at the Wikipedia page for an idea, and then go look at the sources that are cited at the bottom of that page. Wikipedia
100%. Wikipedia's awesome.
Wikipedia itself is...
Endorse that statement. This is the thing that I agree with Vaush the most with so far in this stream.
Some people say it's always an unreliable source. That's not true.
I agree.
There are Wikipedia articles that are written... Sometimes it almost feels like at a college level if you're reading up something on, like, biology.
I'd say most Wikipedia articles are written in a... I wouldn't say most. I'd say a lot. Maybe half at least.
Something on, like, genetics. You're, like, reading it and you're like, oh, wow. I actually don't understand anything. Like, it's not written in an 8th grade...
Who is Encarta? I've never heard of that.
8th grade level at all.
Or him,
Though
or
there
her.
is a simple Wikipedia that you could go to if you do want to read something at an 8th grade level. That's up to you. But if you really want, like, strong engagement with these concepts, go look at what's cited in a political article. You can get a lot out of that. You can get an unbelievable amount out of that. It's so beneficial. If there's anything that I would advocate for more than if there's anything that I would actually consider to be more important than your research method, it would be something called the sociological imagination. I would ask my chat if they know what that is, if they were here to be with me.
Yeah, the sociological imagination is definitely what you use to define all hierarchies as bad.
The first thing that I was taught when I got my sociology, undergrad started. And what it taught me was that it's important to stay hydrated.
Damn, look at that. Destroys my Porsche bottle. I finished this. He's not. Clearly he knows.
Can't deny it. It also taught me to be critical and to be curious when imagining why the world is the way it is. See, a lot of people tend to believe that the world is the way it is in some essentialist way. Why are poor people poor? Well, this is a contentious one, isn't it? Why are black people in America poorer than white people? Why do women and men tend to act differently? Why is this part of the world full of violence and this part of the world stable and secure? And often people resort to very lazy answers to those questions. In truth, there's only one answer, an answer with a million possible explanations. And that answer is that a combination of political, social, economic, religious, whatever factors led to things being the way they are. There are very few essentialist explanations in human society. This is
I'm glad you're being honest about everything here.
A society. It's one that we built. It's one that we live in. We didn't find it in the desert. We constructed it. We built this world. There's nothing essential to it. Or at least there's very little essential to it. We made this world. And because we've been around for a long time, and because developed societies have been around for a long time, there have been plenty of opportunities for people with different values, people with different political beliefs, people with different levels of power to interact with each other in ways that have disadvantaged some groups.
What's Kino software?
Others. Have a sociological imagination. Don't be lazy. Don't just think, oh, this thing is the way.
Having a sociological imagination, the way he put it, is just like, imagine that people's lives are influenced by manipulatable factors. And then hypothetically, there's a system that manipulates those factors to establish a universal good that would be laudable to establish by eliminating all hierarchies, irrespective of consent. My favorite president is George Washington. By far. I think FDR was a good president. I do not think that he was the best president. Probably the most important president of the... Yeah, undoubtedly, actually, the most important president of the 20th century. Unless you count Woodrow Wilson and all the ways he completely fucked up. Yeah, George Washington is much better than FDR, though.
It is because it is. It's not helpful. It won't help you understand these problems. I can't tell you how many...
Do Canadians learn or care about U.S. presidents? Yes, we do. Canadians kind of define ourselves politically by what we think about America. So our political discussions, like, the perfect example right now is, you came in here earlier, or somebody came in here earlier talking about how no one is shutting up about Roe v. Wade right now. All right, even though Canada, believe it or not, is not in the United States, and believe it or not, nobody in Canada is governed by the jurisdiction of the United States, we're talking about Roe v. Wade here. We're having speeches and debates in our parliament, our federal parliament today and yesterday, about abortion in Canada and how important it is, even though all major political parties in Canada support abortion rights. Sounds nice. All the fun, none of the repercussions. Well, see, some people would argue that the repercussion is that we end up importing American politics into Canada, but I don't really think so. In Great Values video, you mentioned your mother told you something insightful on abortion. If you had time, could I mention that? Yeah, I intentionally dodged abortion. First of all, she does have a super interesting opinion on abortion, and it is where I got my opinion on abortion from. I don't really want to get into it, though. I think that abortion is one of the most horrifically intolerant and bigoted political discussions you can have in the United States, next to, like, race. And I don't like talking with people about it for that reason, because the discussions can get very, very heated very quickly. I'm interested in talking about... Yeah, I don't know. That's what I want to say. Hope I didn't put my foot in my mouth or anything there. yeah, abortion is just a politically toxic topic, and it's really difficult to get anyone to move on it. Yeah.
I've had with usually conservatives about.
I have no idea what we're talking about now.
This has been a contentious one, but it's one.
Thanks for asking, though, and thanks for tuning in, guys. You don't think it has to be? I agree that it doesn't have to be. Well, do I actually agree? Now, I think it does kind of have to be this way. The stakes of the abortion debate are so high economically, like for the people involved who need abortions, and so high for the people opposed to abortions because they consider fetuses to be human lives that need to be protected, right? So you're like, people who need abortions are like, this baby is going to ruin my entire life. And people who want them not to get abortions are like, you are committing murder. So, yeah, I think it does kind of have to be that way until we settle it. I actually have a solution that we'll talk about it later. I have a solution that eliminates this divisive problem and redefines all these issues to slowly eliminate the problems that the pro-life and pro-choice people have with abortion as it stands. And that is what I'll say. I have a plan. It's coming. But I don't want to talk about it right now because I don't want to get called a bigot for talking about abortion and not saying that it should be available in unlimited qualities. Unlimited qualities provided by the state up until 99% completion of gestation.
One that comes up often in my
I already regret talking about abortion. I just regret every single thing I just said.
A line of work about racial.
But thank you all for tuning in, and I'm starting political commentary today, so. I do need to be pressed a little bit on these issues, so thank you for pressing me.
Income gaps, why do black people have...
Also, dude, thanks a lot for watching my 8 Values video. Abortion and firearms are just the most radioactive and divisive topics. I think that race is a more radioactive and divisive discussion in the United States than firearms, which is why we're not going to talk about it right now either.
So much less money. Well, slavery was like 150 years ago, and...
I mean, the outcomes are important, but the logic behind it doesn't need to be. Yes, I agree that if you have a conversation about abortion with one person, it can be very civil 99% of the time. If 3 people are involved, even 3 people being involved somehow occasionally can make the discussion way more tense. Not to mention how gender affects the political discussion of abortion. It's a really complicated topic, and it gets toxic almost every time.
The Civil Rights Act passed 60 or so years ago, so why? That's what they ask me, and it's always...
By the way, you're not the first person to watch that 8 Values political thing and talk to me personally about it, about what my position on abortion is. I'm glad that I managed to be compelling.
Talking with them, in part because I don't think they realize how short a time 60 years is.
Also, yeah, I know I said it a bunch, but thank you all for being here, and thank you for tuning in. I had fun with you, and I hope you had fun with me.
Second-class citizen, but... Also because it feels like they're not actually asking. What they're trying to do is shift blame. There's the perception on the part of a lot of conservatives that attempts to address systemic racism are actually an attempt to fleece white people or to make...
I have no fucking idea what we're talking about anymore, by the way. I'm not going to rewind. We're almost there.
People like me are trying to make white people...
Nah, fuck it.
This is
okay. Last time, no more rewinds. We're going.
It's one that we
okay. I'm pausing and then we're going. It's super toxic, but also super stupid because the state should not have a say in people's bodies. Drugs too. No, I actually don't think that drugs are. I mean, Hey, dude, no. What did I just say? It's important. I'm starting my political commentary today. I know I'm nervous about talking about abortion, but I'm gonna have to do a lot of it in the future anyway. So, it's actually a good thing that you brought it up. I would say that. Race is a more politically divisive topic than drugs. I would actually say that the libertarian position that drugs should be decriminalized, the hugely negative consequences of the war on drugs and the hugely negative consequences of the opiate crisis make the consequence about drug use much more simple, in my opinion. It's like everybody agrees that there should not be so many people in prison for nonviolent drug offenses, and everybody agrees that the war on drugs did not reduce drug use, and everybody agrees that the war on drugs promoted, not everybody, lots of people agree that the war on drugs is a primary factor in America's opiate addiction. And so that simplifies the conversation around drugs. Correct! All these social issues are flashy, but Americans mostly vote on economy. I would say that most people vote on economy, even Canadians.
It's one that we live in.
Let's stay focused, people. Although, thank you so much for chatting. Like I said, I'm really glad you guys are here. I'm really having fun chatting with you guys, but let's focus.
There's nothing essential to it, or at least there's very little essential to it. We made this world. And because we've been around for a long time,
yeah. This is what I was saying earlier. What did he say? The sociological imagination or something along those lines? It's something that essentializes every human being into a bunch of manipulatable factors that we can transform to create a better world. It's completely philosophically insufficient, and he didn't outline how it's true or how he could create that world in his 1-hour video.
There have been plenty of opportunities.
Although that was a little bit. I'm asking a little bit too much from that, but he didn't really justify that position. I hope I wasn't too unfair in this video. I think I was.
Values.
I can always try and get better, though. Thank you for doing it.
People with different political beliefs, people with different levels of power.
I'm going to stop thanking you so much as well.
To interact with each other in ways that have disadvantaged some groups and advantaged others. Have a sociological imagination. Don't be lazy. Don't just think, oh, this thing is the way it is because it is. It's not helpful. It won't help you understand these problems. I can't tell you how many arguments I've had with usually conservatives about, this is again a contentious one, but it's one that comes up often in my line of work, about racial income gaps. You know, why do black people have so much less money? Slavery was like 150 years ago, and you know, the civil rights.
Sorry, I just thought about all the terrible white boomer jokes I could make about like black people have a culture problem. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not even gonna do it. It's such bad taste. I'm glad we don't say that anymore. I'm glad I really don't hear even like older white people have used that talking point anymore.
60 or so years ago. So why? You know, that's what they ask me, and it's always tough talking with them, in part because I don't think they realize how short a time 60 years is to have been a second-class citizen, but also because it feels like they're not actually asking. What they're trying to do is shift blame. There's the perception on the part of a lot of conservatives that attempts to address systemic racism are actually an attempt to fleece white people or to make them feel guilty. That left-leaning people, like me, are trying to make white people guilty. We're trying to impugn them for the sins that white people have committed in the past.
Hey, this is kind of spoilers for later, and maybe we will end up watching that Professor Flowers debate now that it came up, but I actually think that Vaush is one of the few leftists who is a little bit racier on the subject of race. That is not like what would I want to say? I don't know. You'll just see from his debate with Professor Flowers that the majority position. I would say that that Vaush is not in line with the majority left position on establishing racial justice. I think it's the opposite. You think that most Americans vote on social issues because most Americans agree on economic issues more than social issues. Social issues are certainly flashier. I believe that Badger_6 was definitely closer to the truth, and I would say that the 2020 election and the 2022 elections will actually bear this out very well. Like, I would say the primary reason that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election was because the economy took a dive and he was so bad at managing the pandemic. And the primary reason Joe Biden is going to get absolutely shellacked, schwanged, destroyed, nuked, deleted, erased, maybe not so much after the Roe decision, but it was looking really bad a couple of days ago in the midterms, is because 70% of the Americans, at least I think, are confident that the American economy is heading into recession. And yeah, you best believe that Americans are going to be voting on that opinion in 2022. And yeah, we might get double Republican supermajorities. That is how bad Biden is polling right now.
Nothing is less interesting to me than that. Nothing. It's incredibly uninteresting to me. What I'm actually interested in, more than anything else, is setting up the cards, putting the pieces together in such a way as to ensure that we don't have these problems anymore. But you can't do that until you know where those pieces are, how they're arranged. And in order to know that, you need to have the imagination to think, why is there a racial income gap? What did lead to that? Was it redlining? Well, that's part of it. Was it policing? Well, that's part of it. Was it legislation? Well, that's part of it. Just
all true.
Think about it for a bit.
Kind of vague?
Okay? Just don't be...
What specifically are you referencing? I'd say this entire video is kind of vague. I agree that that was essentializing the racial political issue in America. But I just did a lot of essentializing of political issues in America. So, and I'm pretty sure I embarrassed myself in the middle of it at some point. So I'm not going to go after Vaush for being too vague there.
Enjoy your research.
It is my first time, and it is his like 1,000th, but whatever.
If you spend 15 minutes reading on any political, economic, or social topic, you will probably know more than enough to trounce the most intelligent demagogues online on that subject. People just don't do any research anymore. It's really disgusting, honestly. Have fun with it. And remember, again, I'm a socialist. That informs my position. Socialists often refer vaguely to something they call theory. That is to say,
15 minutes and I'm good. Yeah, dude. Oh, fucking god damn it. Fuck.
Enough to trounce the most intelligent
you saw my YouTube subscriptions, though.
On that side.
That wasn't embarrassing.
People just don't do any research anymore. It's really disgusting.
That's funny.
Have fun with it. And remember, again, I'm a socialist. That informs my position.
Just some secular talk shit came up.
Socialists often refer vaguely to something they call theory. That is to say, to the...
Both parties do horrible things on the economy, 100%. Lots of people like to debate whether or not the economy is better treated under Republicans or Democrats, and even studies have been done on the subject. At least I'm not sub to Vaush. No, I'm not sub to Vaush. Lots of studies have been done on the subject. I believe that the majority of them end up arguing that the government does better under Democratic administrations, Democratic governments. But I believe, if you looked at the data closely, and I did a few years ago, it is actually much more accurate to say that the American economy goes up when the American legislature is divided the most. So when there is a Democratic president and a Republican legislature, or a Republican president and a Democratic legislature, that is actually when the economy goes up. So it is unclear at which party empirically is better at managing the economy. I am someone who was on the right wing, so obviously I am going to say that, yeah, see what Badger 6 just said. Obviously, I am going to say that I lean towards the Republican and right-leaning, more deregulatory policies. I'm getting tired. We got to be done soon, eh?
Academics, scholars, philosophers, economists who wrote on the issues relevant to socialists. You know, you have your Karl.
Forgive my figuratism, but I see the world in receipts, not unused shopping lists. Well, tell me about that, man. I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. You got 5 minutes before we're done. I gotta take a break after this. Yeah, I am getting a little bit loopy.
Marx, you have your Vladimir Lenin, you have your, Bakunin. There's many of them, And very often there's this discourse on the left. Should you read theory or should you not? Well, of course you should read theory. But don't make the mistake of believing that it's fundamental to understanding these ideas.
I am not really a hockey fan, but thank you for asking.
Gatekeep political understanding behind these pieces of text. It's just not accurate. When Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, ye back a billion years ago, he did so because he recognized that the average European peasant or factory worker probably wasn't going to sit through the 8 billion pages of Das Kapital that he had written in order to arrive at some understanding about how the world was boned. Now, he recognized that though he wanted to extol upon them extensively in Capital, the problems that people face these days really aren't so complicated that you need theory to understand them. Usually you just need a really basic argument, a couple of basic pointers. So theory is good, but don't make the mistake of believing that you need that theory to be an effective advocate for your political positions. Okay? Though I will admit, I've gotten a lot out of reading State and Revolution and some others, so it's worth your time if you want to engage in it. Politics is important. Hopefully this was a good summation of the positions that I hold.
This was a super interesting video.
Why I believe what I believe, very fun.
Republicans like to spend money without raising taxes. Democrats are too far right to do anything good with the economy. Interesting analysis. I gotta say, I disagree.
Fundamentally, and how I arrived.
I think that's a little bit of an oversimplification. So what do you mean Democrats are too far right to do anything about the economy? I'm not one of the people that are just going to call either party radical right or radical left. But what do you think should be done about the economy that the Democrats aren't doing?
The positions that I believe in, and I'll talk about this more in the future. Certainly, at the end of the day, what is politics? Politics is about power more than anything else. It's the power to change the world. That's what it's about.
Politics is about power.
Power for good. Again, being very reductive here. Some people want to use that power because they have a dream for the world. They believe that the world could be better in some way. There could be fewer homeless people. There could be fewer poor people. There could be fewer instances of domestic abuse.
Hey, thanks for tuning in, man. Hope you have a good afternoon. Just coming in at the end of the stream.
Often the world is made better for the efforts of those people. But sometimes people only want power to benefit their own interests, their own position, their own station. I think that many politicians kind of fall into that blanket. And I don't know how much you can do to change those people's minds. The group of people whose minds you can change more effectively than any other are the people who believe they're engaged in politics to improve the world, when in reality, they're engaged in politics to improve the station of another.
How often do I plan on streaming? I plan on streaming at least every other day and probably every day for at least an hour, 2-3 hours.
Person. People who think they're doing...
Thank you for asking, by the way.
...the Lord's work. People who think they're doing good unto the world, but who are actually just parroting a set of positions given to them by a person with a different set of interests. Like the so many poor people who regurgitate conservative talking points that they were taught by millionaire radio shock jocks. Or all the people out there who, to protect the children, advocate against gay marriage, when in reality...
We need to put money in infrastructure, but people like Biden don't want to spend the money needed to anything big. I disagree with you there, man. I would say that it's clearly evident that Democrats are willing to spend the money on infrastructure. If you look at the Build Back Better negotiations and the Build Back Better bill, not the Build Back Better bill, what was the first one? What was the first one? The infrastructure plan. Oh, bipartisan infrastructure, BIF. If you look at the bipartisan infrastructure bill, so much stuff is in there. It's just they chose so many things to focus on that it's not focused enough. So I disagree with you there. There's totally enough money in the bipartisan infrastructure plan for good infrastructure plans. It's just it ended up being a pittance at 150 things instead of a really good shot at 10 or 15 things.
All the homophobia and
I'm not even sure if I would actually say that. I haven't actually read the bipartisan infrastructure plan, and I couldn't tell you like 5 things it did off the top of my head. But I can definitely tell you that it was too spread out to be considered effective. And also, so is all omnibus legislation. It's a practice that we should end in the United States legislature.
Society is actually...
I say we.
...suicide of a great many, young queer people. They may not even know they're doing harm. And that's the tough part, isn't it? How much of it is you having a different...
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for tuning in, man.
Not. Often it's that you don't know or you don't agree upon what is or is not good. Or sometimes you agree upon what is good. You agree upon the things that should be improved, the things that shouldn't be improved, but you don't know how to get there. I get that a lot with other lefties. Some lefties, they'll think that I'm like a liberal capitalist neolib or something because I thought that Biden was better than Trump. At the end of the day, my values are the same as them. And in fact, the things that I believe are good are the same as them as well, too. I imagine many of those lefties agree with me that it's good to have less bigotry and, more income equality.
Almost done. We gotta be.
Blah, blah, blah. But they see what I do. They see what I say, and they make a critical error. They misattribute a position that I hold for an action that I take to get there. They don't understand how A connects to B connects to C. If you become cognizant of this process, why people say what they say, why they believe what they believe, and how those beliefs tie into a set of fundamental principles, you can be very effective at changing their minds. And if you do want to change people's minds, I hope to God you want to do so in a way that improves the world, and not in a way that convinces them to make the world worse, because we've got enough of that.
All right, damn. Oh, that was the whole thing. We'll do this. Check this out. Cool trick. Bam. Think that worked? Yeah, I did. All right. Well, that's the video, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, I was really nervous about starting the stream, and it seemed to go pretty well. I did kind of lose it there around, what would I say? I would say around the actually really only at the last 5 minutes of the video, I'd say I started losing my touch, and I got that. I said I have no fucking idea what I said about abortion. I'm a little bit nervous about it. I hope I didn't offend you or like make you think that I'm bigoted on that opinion or anything. But this was a good first time. I had fun making it. I hope that you had fun doing it. Oh, great stream, Discourse, man. Thank you. That's really touching. Yeah, we're gonna be coming back here probably tomorrow for Politics 102. We have 10 hours of Vaush videos to watch, and if it took me 2 hours to get through this, that means that we have 20 hours of Vaush content to make. So That's kind of tough. Sorry, I was just reading the chat. I'm really glad that you guys tuned in. I'm really glad so many people ended up following. I will see you guys tomorrow for this, and maybe some more rum too. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I'm really sorry if I embarrassed or offended you when I talked about abortion. Otherwise, I think this is a pretty interesting video. I don't think I talked too much. I did run out of stamina at the very end there, but I think my stamina will increase as I get more practice at this. Yeah, I feel like we're done. Sorry. Like I said, I'm kind of tired at the end of this thing. All right, have a really good day, and I'll be seeing you guys later.